Communication with the community. This meeting is being streamed live on the CCPS website at www.carrollk12.org and broadcast live on Channel 21. We are also recording this meeting so that it can be accessed on demand on our website and broadcast throughout the month on Channel 21. Public participation will be held at approximately 5:15. Speakers will be directed into the boardroom from the building lobby, and are allotted 3 minutes to address the board. As a reminder, please silence all cell phones and other devices. Board members, please turn off your microphones when you are not speaking. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, we will move on to the approval of the agenda. Mr. Whistler?
Madam President, I move we table items 6C for next month's meeting.
Okay, do I need a motion for that? Okay, so
I moved.
and,
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
A second.
Okay, and then we can make our,
right, okay,
Make
you're
our
going to make
adjustments.
that motion first?
I'll make the motion first.
Okay, to approve the agenda. I need a second for
I'll
that.
second that.
Okay, now,
Okay, now I'd like to move that we table item 6C for next month's meeting.
And I'll second that.
second that. And comments, questions? And if the vote-
I do have one other adjustment
Okay.
that we can make is we want to remove the part of item 1D, which is the joint meeting minutes
commissioners.
with the commissioners. We want to keep our regular monthly board meeting minutes on there, but remove the item for the joint commissioner meeting.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second that as well.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Now, I will ask for a vote that includes the exercises we have by pulling 6C, and also the commissioners are those approval of those minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now, I will ask first for I need a motion for the approval of the April 10th, 2024 minutes, please. So moved by Dr. Dorsey, seconded by
I'll second.
Ms. Battaglia. Comments, questions? I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. And I see we do not have any other minutes at this time. And now I will ask for a Carroll County Student Government Report. Yes, that's great. Thank you. Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Flamatu Fofana. I'm a senior at Liberty High School, and I think this is the last time that I'll be saying I'm the CCSGA president for the 2023-2024 school year. On April 10th, we had our last General Assembly at Westminster High School, which was a complete success. And we've elected our new board for the school year, with each position being held from a student from a different school. The next president is Enya Slowinski from Century. The vice president is Mason Dean from Winters Mill High School. The secretary is Peony Kang from Liberty High School. And the second vice president is Hannah Caswell from West Middle. And I'm fully confident that this board will shine next year, and I'm very, very excited to see all of their successes. Staff applications are open and are due to Mr. Melhorn by Friday, May 24th, and you can reach out to Enya for more information in regards to that. And before I leave today, I'd like to thank some important individuals that are both in this room and are watching from home. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Melhorn, who has been an amazing advisor. He spends so much time ensuring that we are able to plan our events and handle things smoothly, whilst also having a fun time. And I know that all of our CCSJ advisor officers and staff are very grateful for that. Next, I would like to thank all of the students for showing up to our events and being so engaged. Thank you for always taking it to the next level and surprising me with your attentiveness. And as it is Teacher Appreciation Week, I would like to give a thank you to all of the amazing CCPS staff. My family moved here from Baltimore to Eldersburg because of how great they heard the school system was. And at first it was really tough to adjust to the performance in regards to math and reading. And I felt really discouraged, but I had a really, really great support system within the school system that was really, really helpful. So to my third grade homeroom teacher, my AP research teacher, my advisor for BSU, and many more that I could list. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but thank you. And then finally, I would like to thank Sahithya Sadakar, our current student representative on the Board of Education. Sahi, I still remember the first time that I walked into my CCSGA meeting without a laptop and I was really confused, and you looked at me like you were saying, "I'm sorry." And it was a really funny moment. And honestly, I think you're the reason why I decided to stay in SGA, despite being so intimidated and sorry. We've gone through so many experiences together, and I'm just so thankful and excited to walk the stage with you. So, thank you.
Thank you. And best of luck. And at this time, I'm going to ask everyone up here behind the dais to step down, and we will have the recognition of our outgoing student representative to the board. And we need you in between us. Okay. Right here. Sahithya Sudhakar, Student Representative, Board of Education of Carroll County. Whereas on June 14, 2023, Sahithya Sudhakar, elected under the procedures developed by Carroll County Student Government Association, was officially seated as the 48th Student Representative to the Board of Education of Carroll County, Maryland. And whereas she has regularly and effectively fulfilled the responsibilities of this position as prescribed in the bylaws of the Student Government Association and has rendered outstanding service to the students of Carroll County. And whereas while serving as a student representative to the board, she has continued to maintain high ideals in the classroom and before the public and has been an outstanding student and school citizen. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Education of Carroll County gives recognition to Sahithya Sudhakar for contributions on behalf of all students in Carroll County Public Schools and wishes for her the very best in all future endeavors. And be it further resolved that this proclamation honoring her be inscribed upon the minutes of the Board of Education of Carroll County, Maryland on this 8th day of May, 2024. Congratulations. And I got your name right. Thank you. Congratulations. Okay, there we go.
Okay. If you'd like, you can put those back at your spot. Board members, we'll stay. Oh, yeah, that's great too. Mr. Shockney, if you could come forward to the podium, and we will get right into our Skills USA Awards, which I know many of you are here for this evening.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to recognize our students who have earned medals at our Skills USA competition. Carroll County Career and Technology Center students earned 11 gold medals, 7 silver medals, and 6 bronze medals at the Maryland Skills USA State Conference. Individual students or teams that earn gold medals will be able to represent the Career and Technology Center and Maryland at the National Skills USA Conference in Atlanta in June. Students, as I call your name, I'll ask you to come forward, and your family that's here with you, I'll ask you to stand and be recognized. First, we have Haley Bohr, grade 11, pin design, gold medal. Parents Keith and Christine Bohr. Next, we have Peter Borgans, grade 12, welding fabrication, silver medal. Parents, Dries and Kathy Borgans. Abigail Burke, grade 12, advertising design, bronze medal. Parents, Robert and Susan Burke. Payson Clausen, grade 11, TV video production team, gold medal. Parents, Brian and Jessica Sauls. Zach Vasheen, grade 12, broadcast news production team, gold medal. Parents, Paul and Mildred Vasheen. Wyatt Frederick, grade 12, diesel equipment technology, gold medal. Parent, Mandy Binder. Maya Jermek, grade 12, broadcast news production team, gold medal. Parents, Stephen and Marie Grace Germek. Kashik Ignuva, grade 12, engineering design team, silver medal. Parents, Krishina Ignuva and Vasashundra Diyu Vahindri. Riley Lease, grade 11, promotional bulletin board team, gold medal. Parent, Rebecca Roth. Nick Lapredo, grade 12, welding sculpture, silver medal. Parents, Nicholas and Laura Lapredo. Matt Mowini, grade 11, architectural drafting, silver medal. Parents, Robert and Sarah Mowini. Ella Moxley, grade 11, t-shirt design, bronze medal. Parents, George and Catherine Moxley. Luke Peterson, grade 11, additive manufacturing team, gold medal. Parent, Terry Peterson. Kiera St. Pierre, grade 11, broadcast news production team, gold medal. Parents, Sean and Andrea St. Pierre. Peyton Setterquist, grade 11, broadcast news production team, gold medal. Parents, Joseph and Kathleen Setterquist. Nisashan Sillance, grade 12, promotional bulletin board team, gold medal. Parents, Stephen and Shavi Sillance. Brooke Sims, grade 12, criminal justice, gold medal. Parents, Douglas and Lisa Sims. Ben Smith, grade 12, engineering design team. Parents, Jonathan and Jennifer Smith. Emily Ullman, grade 12, commercial baking, bronze medal. Parents, Gary and Renee Ullman. And Jonas Blateau, grade 12, engineering design team, silver medal. Parents, Michael Blateau and Hey Lam Pack. Did I miss anyone else? Students, congratulations. Thank you so much. We are very proud of your accomplishments. Families, thank you so much for your ongoing support.
Board members, before we go back to the dais, I'd just like to give Sahithia just a few minutes to say something in response to her time as our student rep on the board.
Oh, thank you. I needed that one. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sahithya Sudhakar, and I am the student representative on the Board of Education. Today is pretty much my last day, and it's been a long year. We pushed, we pulled, and the student voice, especially with everything that's happened this year, is crucial. It's necessary. This year, while I've been in this position, I've had roadblocks impeding me on just how much I could utilize my voice. Yet to all the students of Carroll County, I want you all to know that I never stopped fighting for you, for your voice, for your wants, for your needs. It's been amazing to witness the many students this year who have bravely come out to these meetings and spoken their truth, and I can't wait to see that continue. The student representative on the board is not merely a position to be filled, but instead a gateway to hearing your voice. Even when my time ends, I know future Schwabs and students alike will continue fighting for a vote that is not just recorded. On a more personal note, I want to thank my friends who have supported me, even when I tell them I can't hang out with them because I have a meeting. I want to thank my teachers for dealing with my procrastination, and I want to thank my parents in the audience here, who are just excited at me that this is my last meeting. But I have to say, my time as student representative on the Board of Education has been some of the most rewarded moments I've ever had, and the most important responsibility that I've ever had to entail. If there's one thing that I hope I can express in my final takeaways from this experience, it would be that the student voice does not back down. It is the driving force behind our generation, being the ones who will lead us into growth and change. Thank you to the board, and thank you to all those who have supported me, and most of all, thank you to the students of Carroll County.
We'll let them exit first before we continue.
You can take it home. Put it in the vase for me, please.
stand in for another person or group and read their comments. When the allotted time expires, the speaker is permitted to complete a sentence. Citizens may leave any handouts for board members on the table at the back of the boardroom. Please do not approach the dais. Additionally, the public may not display signs or posters during the board meeting. In lieu of signs, or if you are unable to complete your comments in the allotted time, individuals are encouraged to submit remarks to the board in writing. Those seated in the audience are asked to be respectful of the speaker and refrain from commenting to the speaker or to the board members. And our first speaker this evening is Amanda Jaskowski.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm Amanda Jaskowski, a parent, occupational therapy practitioner, and candidate for the Board of Education. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and this week many CCPS schools are focusing specifically on the mental health and well-being of children. Recent findings indicate that about 10% of children and youth and up to 20% of adults are diagnosed with mental health conditions. This is a startling statistic, and it impacts not only individual families, but the functioning of our schools and community as a whole. Factors such as increased screen time, overscheduled lifestyles, and bullying are not just national issues, but are also challenges we face here in our community. These elements contribute significantly to the risk of mental health issues among our youth. In fact, the Surgeon General recently highlighted isolation as a national health emergency because it can increase the risk of suicide as well as many mental and physical challenges in people throughout their lifespan. However, amidst these many challenges you all hear and worry about on a daily basis, there is a potent yet often overlooked remedy, which is play. I'm currently teaching a course on play and playfulness, so this topic is top of mind for me. Play is not merely a break from learning, it's a fundamental part of it. Through play, children develop socially, learning to build relationships, express and manage their emotions, and navigate the complexities of human interactions. It allows them to burn off excess energy, cope with anxiety, develop resilience and empathy, and boost their confidence. These are not just desirable traits, they're essential skills for both academic and life success. Integrating play into education is not only beneficial for cognitive learning, as it's been shown to reduce test anxiety and allow for the individualization of learning experiences, but it's also critical for mental well-being. When play is excluded from the curriculum, we deny children one of their primary occupations and modes of learning. By incorporating playful learning activities and ensuring ample time for free play in the school day, we can also enhance the mood and well-being of teachers and school staff, who themselves are facing increased risks of burnout and overwhelm. As we consider the physical spaces our children occupy, we need to not forget the importance of play areas. Playgrounds are very necessary, as you've heard me speak to previously, but they're just the start. We need to integrate play throughout the school day and into every classroom. A play-based approach should also extend into homes. When parents and caregivers are stressed, children sense and are affected by these emotions. They model their behaviors on what they see and hear around them. If we can work together to create a culture that values and integrates play at school and at home, we will not only improve the immediate well-being of our children, but also equip them with the tools to handle stress and build healthy relationships. This in turn could limit some of the behavioral challenges we're seeing in the classroom. If elected, I will make it my mission to grow a school environment where the joy of childhood is interwoven with learning and growth, and I hope that no matter what, you will partner with me in this effort. I'll be posting some resources for families and educators on my social media page, and will send them to you by email this week as well. I hope you take the opportunity to consider how play and playfulness can be more intentionally incorporated into the school system. Thanks for your time.
Well, the timer works. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, and that alarm was, I had to say anything. Let's see, our next speaker is Gary Foote.
Last week at South Carroll, juniors and seniors voted for prom court. Let's just say the response was decidedly underwhelming. To be fair, students were asked to consider something they just didn't think was all that important. It would be hard to argue with them. But here's the problem. In 6 days, many of these same students should be voting in the primary election. This primary election could well decide control of Congress for the next 2 years. Any student who will be 18 before November 5th is eligible to vote in the primary. How many of our students know that? How many of them know if they live in Congressional District number 2 or number 3? There are 31 candidates for Congress in District 3. Could any of our students identify any of those candidates? There's a good chance they couldn't. How about the people running for Senate? Could they identify any of the issues that should define these races? How many of them don't even know why it is they are getting a day off from school on a perfectly nice day in the middle of May? How many students who graduated last year made plans to come back home to vote in the primary or applied to vote by mail? Many students registered to vote when they got their driver's license. How many of them have forgotten? Of course, I'm being a bit unfair. Probably there are adults who don't know these things either. They don't know because they were never taught. And that's our fault. Because the whole idea of public education in the first place was based on the premise that this would produce an informed electorate who could cast meaningful votes on the issues of the day. Of course, we have spent a large part of our history making sure that certain people don't vote and thinking it was okay not to include everyone. Those days should be over. And schools need to take responsibility for the civic engagement that we don't seem to be teaching. Lately, you have been debating cell phone policy. And I think each of you went on record saying you wanted student input. How much did you get? I'll bet you didn't get much. Most students don't know how. They don't know how because they were never taught. And deep down, most of you realize that it doesn't make sense to get student opinion in the end because students don't vote in your election. And isn't it odd that just when they do get old enough to vote, they have graduated from school and your policies suddenly don't matter so much to them anymore? We can keep complaining about our dysfunctional democracy, or we could do something about it. We need something different, of course, than just a few more civics classes. In the last elections, every one of you described how you could think outside the box. Now's a good time to do it.
Thank you.
Now calling Flamatu Fofana to the podium.
Hello, everyone. Before I begin, I'd just like to preface that my public comment, all the thoughts that I have are my own. So as a senior in high school, I thought I'd like to reflect on the past 9 years that I've spent in Carroll County Public Schools. Like I said before, my parents moved me here in hopes of me receiving a better education, and at first it was definitely hard. I was performing well below the average, and it very much so discouraged me from continuing in school, but I was lucky to be surrounded by teachers that supported me. I think that experience just shows what makes Carroll County Public Schools such a great school system to be in, and that's because no matter your interests, you'll find staff in the building that support you both inside and outside of the classroom. But I have had some negative experiences as well, which is what ultimately led me to sign up for public comment today. Simply put, I and many other students feel as though you don't care about us, support us, or want to celebrate who we are. Because of a lot of the recent policies that have been put in place, the flag policy from 2 years ago, the current book banning happening through our schools, it feels as though the schools only want a watered-down version of who I am and my experiences. I do not fit the narrative, and I never will. It feels as if the policies mentioned are trying to censor anything that has to do with my identity. Being one of only 2 black girls in my elementary school, and oftentimes one of the few students of color in my classroom, resulted in me hating my identity. I hated being black, I hated being Muslim, and I wished I could just fit in. I was tired of the misconceptions both certain peers and teachers made about my identity, and while I will say my environment has gotten better, but right now, in this current climate, it feels as though the board does not want to hear what we have to say and want to support all the diverse identities that the student body makes up in regards with both gender, race, sexual orientation, or religion. With all of the memories of proms and event with friends, I'll remember making up homework assignments because the school does not give off for Eid, the frustrations that I felt when students would repeatedly use the N-word in the classroom as a joke, but I'll also remember the teachers that would let me sit in their school classrooms hours after school to make me feel as though I matter. Ultimately, what I want to get across with my public comment is that the student body wants you to hear our voices and understand us more. This is our school system, these are our lives, our experiences, and we want to work with you to make sure that they're positive ones. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for everything that you have done on the SGA and representing our students. I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you. All right, and now we will move on to employee groups.
Hold on, I thought there was going to be more public comment. I was not prepared. Good evening, Board of Education, Superintendent McCabe. I'm Celeste Jordan, President of CCEA. This week is National Teacher Appreciation Week, which is always celebrated the first full week of May. Here in Carroll County, I've seen photos of some of the really great things that parent organizations are doing for CCPS educators. I encourage parents and students to write a note to their educators this week or before the end of the school year. Long after the last brownie is eaten, a note will still be there. Every teacher I know has a box of notes which can help inspire and refuel them when they are struggling. I still have mine at my CCA office. While it is Teacher Appreciation Week, don't forget all of the people who make a difference in a student's life. There are classroom teachers, obviously, media specialists, school counselors, speech-language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, registered nurses, interventionists, occupational therapy assistants, excuse me, physical therapist assistants, parent educators, mentor teachers, reading specialists, mathematics specialists, mental health therapists, the Judy Center learning community teachers, the JRTC instructors, our academic facilitators, our birth to 5 special education services, our high school facilitators of student support, our ESOL resource teachers, our advanced academic educators, career connection coordinators, and behavioral support specialists. Special educators who work with students from birth to age 21 in a variety of settings, such as the Learning for Independence, BEST, and Autism programs, and the Transitions Academy, to name a few. A school cannot function without the case units, the cafeteria workers, the custodians, or the administration. Every adult in the building educates the students. Students never fail to see how adults behave and interact with students as well as other adults. Every year I plant about 100 spring bulbs in my yard. I plan where I want the bulbs to grow. I attempt to dig in the clay and shale. I haul a bunch of mulch, and then winter comes. I don't know exactly how my yard will look. It is an exercise in delayed gratification. I worry when we get those fall springs and I start to see shoots that the next frost is going to kill them all. But in the spring, I'm rewarded with waves of daffodils and tulips. The word kindergarten, of German origin, means children's garden. Friedrich Vogel, probably pronounced wrong, a German educator, opened the first kindergarten in 1837. Garden is an apt analogy because you can't always control the end result, but you can provide the right conditions for growth. This is what it's like to be an educator. You do not get to see the results of your hard work immediately. It is sometimes years before you see former students bloom into adults they are meant to be. So I would ask adults listening to reach out during Teacher Appreciation Week to one of your educators and let them know how much they were appreciated. I will end with a quote attributed to many people. Everyone who remembers their own education remembers teachers, not methods and techniques. The teacher is the heart of the education system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. McCabe, members of the Board of Education. I am Cindy Porter, President of CASE, representing LPNs, clericals, and assistants working in Carroll County Public Schools. First this evening, I would like to note that today is National School Nurse Day, and I want to recognize and thank the nurses in our schools who serve our students and staff all day, every day. Yesterday was also National Teachers Day, and I'd like to recognize the teachers across our entire county who go above and beyond for our students each day. While thinking about my remarks for this evening, I was reminded that it was about a year ago that I began speaking about injuries to staff, particularly in the case bargaining unit. A year later, there are still questions regarding procedures, a lack of system-wide communication of information, all while we have continued to see an increase in staff injuries. Recently, a case bargaining unit member was attacked twice in a little over a month by the same student, the last time with a pencil intentionally broken to use against the staff member. And most concerning about that situation was that one of the very first things said to the targeted staff member was not a statement of concern, but rather questions regarding the handling of the situation at the time of the occurrence. As a school system, we need to ensure that staff injuries resulting from out-of-control student behaviors are not normalized. We also need to ensure that one of the first concerns should be for the welfare of those staff members. There are and have been 80 or more vacancies in the case bargaining unit for student support assistants, with those positions being ones who work most closely with some of our neediest students. It will be difficult to fill those positions when one of the first considerations for someone thinking about accepting a position must be the risk of being seriously injured while helping to support the education of students in Carroll County Public Schools. We have recently witnessed very positive collaborative efforts to make strides with employee groups, a topic mandated by the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, and to have difficult but crucial conversations with our county commissioners. When it comes to staff injuries, we can do better, and we need to do better. As a school system, we have an opportunity to continue to lead in the state of Maryland by collaborating with all stakeholders to see what we can do to minimize the risk of injuries, especially serious injuries, to our current and future staff members. CASE stands ready to be a part of the collaboration to make crucial and timely strides on this issue in our county. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will move on to recognitions and board member activities and correspondence. Sahithya, we're going to ask you to go first tonight.
I think I'm keeping it pretty short and sweet.
Okay.
I want to wish students who are currently taking exams and students who will be taking AP exams the best of luck. I know it's a stressful time, and let's make sure that we know that this score is not defining you in any way, and I hope everyone the best of luck to that. Along with that, good luck to all seniors who are preparing for their finals coming up, and congratulations to the many dramas that have been held in all of our high schools, and congratulations to all athletes in the spring sports this season. Along with that being my last board report, I cannot wait to pass the mantle of student representative to Chloe Kang. The voice of student representative is so powerful, and I can't wait to see her use it.
Thank you. Ms. Savigny.
Thanks, Ms. Herbert. I will be short and sweet as well. We did have our last Family Life Advisory Committee meeting of the year, and you will see some of the recommendations that are coming through from that group at the next meeting in June. So looking forward to that. It was a great group of folks that got together, and even though maybe opinions weren't always completely aligned, everyone was very respectful, and they were just very productive, very good meetings for the benefit of our students, and I want to thank the administrators who helped really have those be productive meetings. So thank you, Mr. Wernick, and the rest of your staff for having those meetings be so productive this year. Look forward to the continuation of those meetings starting up at the beginning of next year. And just wanted to reiterate some of the things that Sahi just said. It's the time of spring sports. High school musicals, proms are coming up. It's AP exams, we have SATs, lots of testing for at the state level. Graduations, it's a very busy, very exciting time of the year, and I just wish all of our students luck with all of those things, and I just want to thank staff for everything that you do to make the lives of our students better. So thank you, and I'll hand it over to Ms. Battaglia.
Ms. Battaglia.
May 24th, I attended our employee recognitions. I do want to congratulate again to our principal, assistant principal, and teacher of the year, as well as all those that were nominated. On May 1st, I attended the Special Olympics at Westminster High School, and I do thoroughly enjoy that activity that is held over there. Just making sure that our students have and feel that they are part of a community in sports and active. It was a really great event. So I'm glad I got to attend that. On May 3rd, I got to participate in the 4-H swine weigh-ins. That was rather fun, waiting in line for about 2 hours to find out my daughter's pig respectfully weighs 106 pounds. Upcoming events I have coming up, I have LAC, SAC, and CAC meetings, various end-of-the-year ceremonies and graduations. The 4-H goat and sheep weigh-ins are coming up, and a reminder that our schools are closed on Tuesday for Election Day, so make sure you go out to vote. I do again want to, as some others have said, good luck to all of our students who are participating in our spring concerts and spring sports, all the various testing and activities that are going on. Everyone that's attending proms and dances, please enjoy them, and all the celebrations you have coming your way. Happy Mother's Day coming up. I do want to thank everyone that reached out to me and my family regarding the death of my grandmother, Anna Grace Packer, my dad's mom. She was truly an incredible woman and a saint. She was the youngest of 13 kids, married to my grandfather of 68 years. She had 6 children, 18 grandchildren, and 23 great-grandchildren. She was a nurse in the public health here in Carroll County for many years before she moved back to Northumberland, Pennsylvania, where she continued her nursing career. She was kind to everyone that she met. Her door was always open. She would always have coffee ready, and the kitchen table was always the gathering place for laughter and conversation. She was truly an incredible woman. She was loved by many and will be missed by many. And a quote that I actually saw before my mom had called me to tell me the news on May the 4th. Quote is, "The biggest mistake we make in life is thinking we have time. Be present, be kind, love more, and love now." Especially for our seniors, make the most of every moment you have right now, because it does go by fast. Again, I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend coming up. Ms. Herbert will touch base on a great thing that's happening, so I do want to wish everyone that celebrates a happy Mother's Day as well.
Thank you. Dr. Dorsey.
Thank you. I'll begin with a comment shared by Mrs. Porter. Today is National School Nurse Day. The professional nurses in our schools are dedicated to the safety, health, and academic success of all our students. They play significant roles not only in health care at their schools, but also in helping students meet the challenges they face each day, supporting education and advancing student health. So thank you to our school nurses for being instrumental in our efforts to keep our students, staff, and community healthy and safe. As far as my activities are concerned, on April 23rd, I attended my conference program committee planning meeting. I met with the conference co-chair and MABE staff to plan for an upcoming committee meeting. On April 24th, I had the pleasure of visiting Westminster High School's Media Center and chatting with the media specialist, Kimberly Johnson. Ms. Johnson shared pertinent data about the use of the Media Center at Westminster High School, and it's great to see that the students are making use of that wonderful resource. There was a special event scheduled in the library that day. It was Westminster High School's 3rd annual Calming Carnival. The Calming Carnival is a collaboration between Sources of Strength and the library. Students who are in Sources planned activities that correspond to the Healthy Activities wedge of the Sources of Strength wheel. There were inside and outside activities. In the library, some of the activities that were going on were games, puzzles, friendship bracelet making, coloring pages, etc. I was introduced to an energetic student intern who expressed a love for reading and the media program, which she intends to pursue in her future. I also visited the Peace Garden, where a poetry walk was installed to celebrate April's designation as National Poetry Month and School Library Month. Some of the works posted were by known poets and others by Westminster High School students and staff. I also took the opportunity to visit the BEST program at the high school, and thanks to Mr. Bassler for the tour of the program. On April 25th, I spoke to 5th grade students at Robert Moton Elementary School who were learning about the Brown versus Board of Education case, segregation, and integration. They were interested in hearing some firsthand or lived experience. So thanks to Ms. Megan Grabowski for the invitation and to the fifth grade team and students for the engaging dialogue. On May 1st, I attended a MABE Awards Committee virtual meeting to review applicants for MABE's Excellence in Education Award. The award will be presented at this year's MABE conference in October. Finally, on May 6th, I attended a budget rally to support our teachers and our staff, and to really encourage and thank the Board of Commissioners for funding our board's budget so far and the CCEA ratified agreement. And finally, I'd like to wish best wishes and congratulations to Sahithya. I'm sure you'll do well in whatever you pursue. And I'll just pick up on the one comment that the one student, Famata, shared. Again, it was great to hear her acknowledge the great teachers who took the time to invest in her. And, you know, that's really important, and it's really great to hear that our teachers are still doing that, making those connections and reaching out to help students. It's a little disheartening when she shared her other comments, thinking that, you know, we're not showing that we care for all students and all student voices. So this is just my plea to the board and to those who work with students that we really do have to show that we care for everyone, regardless of any diversity factors. We have to show that we care. That old adage, people don't care how much you know until you show how much you care. So we have to show all of our students that we do care for them, and we have to support each and every one. So thanks.
Mr. Whistler, you have a recognition, and then you're...
I do, yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy May. This week is also, in addition to, you know, Teacher Appreciation Week, it's also National Pupil Personnel Worker Week, in case you didn't know. Our PPWs serve as advocates for students and families and consult and collaborate with staff on issues such as attendance, discipline, residency, homelessness, and crisis support. They work hard to connect families to the community resources they may need and to help form and maintain a positive home-school connection. Thanks to all our PPWs for their dedication and commitment to our students and families. And so my board activity report this month, I think I had 5 events I went to. On April 16th, I too had an invitation from Westminster High School's librarian, Mrs. Kim Johnson. The program that she and Donna Hamby have built serves as a hub of educational resources for every student there. I watched her and her colleagues teach classes, foster student research and reading, and even fix computer issues for staff and students. I really do encourage everyone to visit the school's Peace Garden near the front entrance of the school. As Dr. Dorsey mentioned, I hope it's still up there, but she has installed a poetry walk that does showcase student work and just exceptionally positive messages. So thank you, Mrs. Johnson, if you're watching, for inspiring students and giving me a better appreciation of the work that you and your colleagues do every day. On April 17th, I attended the Chamber of Commerce Legislative Luncheon at Carroll Community College to hear the impact of bills passed in Annapolis this past session. As always, I really appreciate our state delegation's advocacy to improve education and also ensure our school system retains local control. On April 24th, I spent much of the day with educators at the Farm Museum for the semi-annual Teacher Advisory Council meeting. I really appreciated hearing the rich discussion, great ideas, and policy suggestions that we can make to not only improve student attendance, but ensure appropriate use of artificial intelligence, AI, and also cell phones in our schools. So I really appreciated that hearing those voices. Also on April 24th, I attended the teacher recognition event at Cranberry Station Elementary. It was great seeing so many staff members recognized for their longevity and their hard work. Congratulations to Brian Thompson, Tom Riddle, and Jody Weaver for winning their categories respectively. And a real special congratulations to Granville Hibbard, who has been a CCPS employee for 50 years. And when he walked up to the stage, I said, just so you know, Mr. Hibbard, I'm 56 years old. So he was 6 years old when he started working at CCPS. On May 2nd, I attended the Boys and Girls Club's Youth of the Year Awards at Carroll Community College. The club awarded tens of thousands of dollars in scholarships to several of our high school seniors and recent grads now attending college. I'm incredibly grateful to the club staff, McDaniel College mentors, all the donors, and so many others who help our kids grow into tomorrow's leaders. They play such a huge role in after-school activities and homework for our kids. So I'm just so thankful for the locations that they operate in our schools and also throughout the community. And a sad farewell to you, a remarkable young lady. You are my second student of the member board. And again, you're just incredibly remarkable, and I know you're going to do great and big things. So we will miss you, and we're really sad to see you go. I hope our moms have a very happy Mother's Day on Sunday. And since we'll be officially out of school during our next board meeting, I'd like to take the time now to wish all students a very safe and relaxing summer, as well as our staff as well. I hope our staff stay in their flip-flops all summer long. They work so hard and deserve it. And I can't wait to see all of our seniors at graduations. I will be at every single one, and congratulations to all.
Thank you. Ms. Battaglia, recognition.
So you guys heard it, I think, from all of us. This week, May 6th through the 10th, is National Teacher Appreciation Week, and yesterday was National Teacher Day. During this week, we celebrate our extraordinary educators who work tirelessly throughout the year to help all our students learn, grow, and fulfill their potential. We are truly fortunate to have such dedicated teachers who go above and beyond every day to meet the needs of our students and provide them with the high-quality instruction. Thanks to our teachers for all you do for our students.
Thank you. Sahithya, I want to wish you the best of luck, and please come back and see us. They leave, and then we don't see them, or I run into parents, and we would love to see you and let us know how well you're doing. Best of luck. Okay, thank you. And each year, McDaniel College student athletes team up with CCPS elementary and middle school students with special needs to participate in the Tournament of Champions held in the gym at McDaniel College. This year marks the 33rd annual event. This is a short video showing the enthusiasm and joy of the 100 CCPS students as they participate in various athletic events. And I do want to do a shout out to Linda Gebhardt. She does a wonderful job. She's no longer employed with us. She's working at McDaniel, but she's still always intertwined with CCPS. Thanks, Pat. Pat Flannery did a great job on that. And then I have a few more things. I did speak at the commissioner's budget hearing, and I was really taken back by CCEA. They stood up for my speech and Dr. McCabe's speech. And my sister called me from North Carolina and said, Marcia, that has never, ever happened in all the years that she can ever remember being a teacher, that we all stood together. And I really want to thank you all, because I was taken back, because I went back and looked at the video and I'm like, I was taken back because I stopped talking, and that's not like me. So anyway, this is what I read to the commissioners. I would like to begin by thanking the commissioners for funding the additional $6 million in our operating budget. This has allowed Carroll County Public Schools to be one of the first school systems in the state to ratify all 5 employee units. In addition, we are able to fund our career ladder, which will help us to be more competitive and attract more applicants to our school system. And that is a true statement, because it has been unbelievable recruiting when they all went out the other week and they found out that we had settled and the line formed, and we have not had lines formed to come to Carroll County. And I would be remiss if I did not take the time to thank all of our teachers for all they do each and every day for our students and our school system. As a former teacher, I can attest to the fact that teaching is not an easy profession. Yet, our teachers come to work and face the challenges that await them every day. This is one of the many reasons why we are one of the best school systems in the state of Maryland. So and Dr. McCabe also spoke and thanked, and Celeste thanked the commissioners, because we are on a pathway now, a positive pathway, and we must continue this. And this Saturday is the Big Country Mother's Day breakfast. If you have time, please go out. I think it starts at 7, and it all goes to Skills USA, and we are so appreciative of that. And my last comment is, go vote. All right. Take it away, Dr. McCabe.
Okay, first this evening, congratulations to Brian Thompson, instrumental music and vocal general music teacher at Westminster Elementary School, for being named the Carroll County 2024 Teacher of the Year. Brian has a total of 19 years of teaching experience, all of which have been in Carroll County Public Schools. He began teaching at Northwest Middle School in 2005 and moved to Westminster Elementary School in 2006. Under his leadership, the instrumental music program has a participation rate of 70% of all 4th and 5th grade students. Last year, ensembles from the school earned straight superior ratings at the Music in the Parks adjudication. Congratulations again to Brian, who will now go on for consideration as Maryland Teacher of the Year. On a related note, I am also pleased to share that Carroll County Public Schools has been recognized among the best communities for music education by the National Association of Music Merchants Foundation for our outstanding music education programs. This marks the 8th consecutive year that we have received this recognition. This designation recognizes the outstanding efforts of teachers, administrators, parents, students, and community leaders who are making music part of a well-rounded education for every child in their communities. Congratulations to Carl Stewart, Supervisor of Visual and Performing Arts, and all of our music teachers on this award. I also would like to congratulate Tom Riddle, Principal at the Carroll County Career and Technology Center, and Jody Weaver, Assistant Principal at Northwest Middle School, Northwest Middle School, who are the recipients of the 15th Annual Rita Board Dowd Awards for Outstanding Carroll County School Administrators. These awards are given annually to 2 school administrators, 1 principal and 1 assistant principal. The goal of the awards is to recognize exceptional educational leadership in serving our school system and our students. Tom has been principal at the Carroll County Career and Technology Center since 2023. He previously served as an assistant principal at Manchester Valley and South Carroll High Schools. Prior to that, he was an ESOL resource teacher and taught social studies at North Carroll and Manchester Valley High Schools. Jody has been an assistant principal at Northwest Middle School since 2023. Prior to that, she served as assistant principal at Shiloh, East, and North Carroll Middle Schools. Congratulations to all our high school drama departments for a highly successful spring season. From Seussical the Musical to Mamma Mia, this year's musicals were extremely well done and much enjoyed by their audiences. These productions were months in the making and would not have been possible without the hard work of our students, both on stage and behind the scenes, as well as the leadership of our outstanding drama teachers. And finally, I would like to remind everyone that Tuesday, June 11th, will be the last day of school for students. There will be a 2-hour, 45-minute early dismissal on that day. And I'd like to wish everyone a safe and relaxing summer. And finally, Sahithya, goodbye, good luck, and we know that you'll do great things.
Thank you. Mr. Riddle graduated from North Carroll, and Rita Board taught at North Carroll. And a lot of you do not know her, but she was a wonderful educator, and it's so proud that that family continues to give that title to two of our wonderful administrators. And now we will move on to our presentation of the night, Family and Community Partnerships.
All right, good evening, board members. Just a quick overview as identified in our 2023-2026 strategic plan. We provide you annual updates on each pillar. Tonight, we're going to do a little presentation discussion on Pillar 2. And as always, we want to make sure you're informed, our community is informed on the progress that we're making towards our plan. Just a little bit of an overview on what Pillar 2 is. As I said before, the focus of Pillar 2 is to strengthen productive family and community partnerships, and this is our month for this report. Here's just a snapshot of what the strategic plan looks like, and for our community out there listening, this is all accessible on the CCPS website. We have, for each pillar, we have objectives that are further broken down by priority focus areas. And for Pillar 2, we have 3 of those. So we're going to take a moment, and I have some folks that are going to break down and discuss each one of those for us. But essentially, we focused on participation in our Community Advisory Council, also with a number of apprenticeships and internships that we've provided, and finally, solicitations, too, for purchasing. So to get us started, I'm going to turn things over to Ms. Carrie Gaddis, who she's going to give us a little update on where we are with the Community Advisory Council.
Good evening, board members. I'm pleased to report that we have met our goal. We have 100% of schools with a representative on the council. We also have representatives from our employee groups on the council, as well as a student representative who comes from the Carroll County Student Government Association. As you may remember from a few years back, we would have some principals who had trouble finding a representative on the council. So they would have a staff member represent the school, or the principal themselves would represent the school. So we're very proud of the fact that now 100% of our school representatives are parents of students in CCPS. We've also increased the number of meetings from 4 to 5, and that was done at the suggestion of the board. And you would think that one additional meeting would not make that much of a difference, but it really has. And we've seen a nice increase in engagement and involvement from our members. And we're also seeing a nice increase in our attendance at individual meetings. Years ago, we were lucky if we had our 10 or 15 people attend our meetings, and now we routinely have a minimum of 30 people at each of our 5 meetings. And I think some of the increase that we've seen in attendance has to do with the goal of setting more, having more relevant and timely topics at our board meetings. For example, this year we had staff come and talk about artificial intelligence. They talked about the reconsideration process. They talked about school security. Dr. McCabe comes to one meeting a year and gives a brief presentation and then opens it up for questions. So if you're a member of the council, you have an opportunity to ask questions directly to the superintendent. Mr. Shockney is coming to our next meeting and talking about cell phones and gathering input from the members on the council. So As most of you are aware, the council has had growing pains through the years, but we've made adjustments along the way. We're in a good place, and we are doing very well right now. And with that, I'll turn things over to Mr. Warnick.
Good evening. It has been a very successful year for our students who are taking part in their apprenticeships and internships. With our apprenticeships, we've actually increased by 15 this year. We went from 2 to 17, and our actual target or goal was 8. So we've doubled that this year, which is very impressive for our students. With our internships, we've actually increased by 53 to 438 internships, and our goal was 398. So it's been a great opportunity for our students to continue to take part outside of the school system in enriching activities to support them within their college and career readiness standards and supporting them to continue to move forward with job development and to enhance their skills that they've learned within the school system.
Growth on apprenticeships is obviously a big component of our blueprint efforts as well too. So I know that we're not where we want to be ultimately, but we've made great progress and we've exceeded our target. And just to point out too, for the community as well. So I went back a slide here for us just to point out something I forgot to point out earlier. We have baseline data from the start of the 22-23 school year, but then we have targets for each of the year, and at the end of the year, because some of these numbers may adjust a little bit, we'll be sure to enter in the performance for year 1, which is the year that we're in presently, and then we'll also identify if we've met that target or not for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warnick. And the last piece I just wanted to hit a little bit on, which is that third component, which was a kind of an increased effort on posting solicitations. And we've had some staffing changes in our purchasing department, coupled with a very busy year with some very big projects going on. So we're still in that process of analyzing and taking a closer look at the platforms and opportunities that we could use to help with that. So we're not there yet on this one, but we're working on that one. So we need a little bit of extra time for this last priority focus areas. But we plan for next year having some very clear, specific plans in place for next school year. And with that, I'll open things up for questions.
Thank you. You better sit down. Nobody lifted a card.
I didn't put my card up, so.
All right, now we will move on to reports. And the first one for the evening is school construction report.
The monthly construction report provides details and status on our 2 major projects, system renovations, and other smaller projects. The project list has been updated to include projects for this summer, as well as projects in the planning and design stages. Some of these projects in design stage appear later on the agenda for approval. Mr. Marks is here for any questions.
Ms. Savigny?
You know, I couldn't go 2 in a row without putting my card up there.
I know. I'm very well aware of that. I saw you grab it.
Thanks, Mr. Marks. Yeah, there are a lot of things, I guess, that we're going to be getting at later on in the evening, so I'll save my questions for that. But just curious about the Oklahoma Road HVAC project, how we're kind of spreading that back out over 2 summers again. Do we think that that's going to have any impact on the overall cost for that project?
No, it was actually bid that way. The contractor was trying to arrange all the equipment deliveries and subcontractors to make it happen in one summer. And right after you all awarded the contract, he had everything on board and all the chips were in alignment perfectly to make it happen. But then in the past month, you know, some things fell apart with deliveries and things like that. So they turned around and said, it's better we tell you now. Let's go back to the original plan of 2 summers. And so it doesn't affect us in cost at all.
Okay, great. Yep. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Whistler?
I apologize. Again, it's not on the list. I thought I recalled seeing a roof replacement for Oklahoma Road also on the plans. Did that fall off, or?
No, we're trying to make that happen next summer also with the second half of the HVAC. That's our first goal, is to try to get that roof replaced with it. If not, then we'll follow up after that. But there's also funding that Mr. Kane is chasing for that as well. So
thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Marks.
You got it.
And now we will move on to personnel transaction report.
Typically,
Dr. McCabe.
Typically, this time of year, I bring before you my recommendations for transfers of administrators. We will continue to do the same in upcoming meetings with the goal of having all administrators in their new locations by July 1st. Tonight, I have 6 assignments to report. David Herman, from Assistant Principal at South Carroll High School to Assistant Principal at Francis Scott Key High School. Joshua Rudder, from Assistant Principal at Francis Scott Key to Assistant Principal at East Middle. Joseph Van Kiebe, from Assistant Principal at East Middle to Assistant Principal at West Middle. Noah Scholl, Assistant Principal at West Middle to Assistant Principal at East Middle. Michael Golden, Assistant Principal at North Carroll Middle to Assistant Principal at Northwest Middle. Philippa Gomes, Supervisor of Health Services and Student Services to Community School Specialist at Tawnytown Elementary School.
Comments, questions? I will miss Mr. Golden. All right, now we will move on to Blueprint Implementation Report. Mr. O'Neill.
At certain milestones, we provide the board with updates on blueprint implementation. We just met the deadline for submitting our blueprint implementation plan to the AIB, and I've asked Mr. O'Neill to provide an update.
Thank you, and good evening. This could be bad. There we go. So as Dr. McCabe said, the May 1 was the deadline for the next version of the blueprint report. You have that this evening in your packets. It is not yet, I believe, publicly available, but it soon will be posted to the AIB's website. They have a repository of documents, and when we get the green light from them, we'll also post it to our own website as well, or make the link. And I would encourage everyone, anyone interested in the public, anyone who's been following the superintendent's town hall meetings over the last couple of years, to pay attention to that plan and look at that plan. We've talked about the change in structure a bit in the past leading into submission. It's a much different plan than the original one a year ago. It's a plan that sort of looks back each year at what's been accomplished, but then also looks forward in terms of setting some targets into the future. So there's a lot more meat on the bones now, and it's worth taking the look. A couple of notes. This was the year where we could plan with the assistance of the strategic facilitator who was provided and funded by the AIB, Dr. Frank Grossman, and that was a real benefit to the process as well. Frank was a great deal of support and assistance in getting the work done. And before I move into some of the accomplishments, I do want to say there's no way to name everybody because you're talking about dozens of folks, but so many people in the organization invest just a tremendous amount of energy and time, and I mean staff, employees, stakeholder groups, partners like the unions, et cetera. So the plan also is sort of a celebration of the reflection of a lot of that work, and a lot of people sitting in this room who chair committees based on the pillars of the blueprint who spend a ton of time. Just a couple of minutes and a couple of slides on some of the highlights, sort of that looking back kind of aspect of the plan. There's I think a few things that merit talking. We always talk about the funding and the challenges of the funding. We don't always take a minute to talk about what are we doing? What are we actually accomplishing here? And a couple of things worthy of note and celebration. The support of the facilitator, we honestly weren't sure about that process. It's all new, and that was new. Dr. Grossman was able to integrate into our system and learn our system pretty quickly, provide a lot of support, provide a lot of well-intended critical questions to further our thinking. He assisted a lot with stakeholder engagement, in addition to our own stakeholder engagement, getting in touch with groups in new and different ways than sometimes we're able to. And so we're appreciative of that, and we're hopeful that the AIB might continue that initiative into next year's pre-K expansion. We talk an awful lot about how it's very hard for Mr. Wernig and Ms. Myers and their team to grow participation with private providers, and other counties experience that as well. But locally in the school system, we've been successful every year in maximizing the use of the annual pre-K expansion grant and expanding full-day pre-K as much as possible within the system. In any school where there's some space to do it, or where the schools can make some space to do it. And for fiscal 25, utilizing the state expansion grant again, Steve and his team are growing 4 more sites of full-day pre-K. So that work has been going on for quite some time and continues. That's a success. Mr. Wernig and Mr. Shockney spoke earlier about internships and apprenticeships under the blueprint as part of the Pillar 2 report, so I won't repeat that. But that's a, well, I'm not there yet. I'm going to slide off on my own notes here. Post-CCR pathways, some growing pains with that, some funding pains with that, as we've talked about a lot. But in the grand scheme of things, we do have all of the required post-CCR pathways. There's 3 different pathways that have to be in place. They are built out and they are operational and they will be growing over time. A couple of examples of that, we did increase AP exams to 988 from last year to this year and have added AP pre-calculus, and that all rolls into the AP diploma program. For CTE, like I said, I don't want to repeat what Steve and Nick said, other than to add that of those 17 apprenticeships they referenced, 6 of those apprenticeships occur within our school system. So we are the employer in some of our own student apprenticeships, and that's been a great thing to be part of and watch unfold. And then, it's a thing you have to do. It was a requirement, certainly, the career ladders, and we know all about that, and you've ratified the agreements, and we've talked about it, and so that's done, and that in itself is a success to have accomplished it and submitted it to the AIB. But I also want to say that sort of last sub-bullet there, there's still a lot of work ahead, and we talk about that from time to time as well. And there'll be some challenges, and there'll be some disagreements, and there'll be some difficult things to overcome when we look at kind of those next stages of implementing a career ladder. We have the structure, now we have to fully implement it. But I will say, at least for me, and I think that our friends from the union here would agree, the experience wasn't always easy, but it did lead to a new and different level of collaboration than maybe we've had in quite some time. And while all of these things I just said are true, there will be challenges, and there will be some places where maybe we don't come to full agreement about implementation or how it should look. I think the experience of setting that foundation of a working relationship with the 2 bargaining units that are attached to the career ladder are really an accomplishment and a success in itself, and lend itself to doing its best to help with that work going forward. And so I want to express my appreciation to the 2 folks in the room and to the other association as well. And then real quick, finally, one more update on College and Career Ready. We've talked about this a lot. Nick's talked about the standard and the interim standard and the permanent standard, and some of our concerns about how it really doesn't seem to incorporate CTE students yet. And it has an impact on funding, so we've covered that a few times. But I did want to note that House Bill 1426 passed in this current General Assembly, and it is a bit of a positive in some ways, in that it will offer us some flexibility over the next couple of years of working particularly on the dual enrollment part of College and Career Ready to, I'll just say, better manage some of the costs we've been struggling to contain. And so we've had some initial conversations with the college. We're always having conversations with the college. We'll continue that discussion relevant to the changes that HB 1426 allow as we look at future MOUs with the college as well. But hopefully, a little bit of good news on maybe being able to sort of get a handle on some of those costs related to dual enrollment in the future. And I think that's it for the report, unless you have any questions or comments.
Thank you. And seeing no questions, we will move on to action items. And now I need a motion for the approval of the award of bids.
So moved.
By Ms. Battaglia, second by Dr. Dorsey.
There are 12 items on the award of bids this evening. Number 1, paving at 4 schools. This award is for paving at 4 schools: Francis Scott Key, Northwest Middle, Mechanicsville Elementary, and Runnymede Elementary. We assess the conditions at all schools and prioritize paving projects each summer using the local CIP paving project account. Number 2, relocation of 1 portable classroom building. As the project unfolds at the Career and Tech Center, we are moving one of the relocatable classrooms from there to Sandy Mount Elementary, where there is a need pending the addition project there. Number 3, commissioning services for HVAC replacement projects. This award is for commissioning services for the HVAC replacements at Mount Airy Middle and Oklahoma Road Middle Schools. Commissioning services are part of the CIP budgets for these projects. 4, furnish and installation of carpet and tile at 6 locations. The next 2 items are funded by the state's Aging Schools Program Fund. This first award is for the replacement of carpet and tile at 6 locations, including this very room. Number 5, rooftop units at West Middle School. This is to replace 2 rooftop units at West Middle that are over 30 years old and in need of replacement. Item 6, sole source alternative transportation. These next 2 items are for alternative transportation services for students. These services are as needed throughout the year, typically within our special education transportation program. Number 7, sole source alternative transportation. Again, this is another alternative transportation service for students as needed. Number 8, ice cream and freezers. The next 3 items are part of the food services program and are funded through the Food Services Program Fund. This award is for ice cream and freezers for our schools. Next, furnish and install a walk-in cooler and freezers at 3 schools. This award is part of the asset renewal progress of the Food Services Program and is for the installation of walk-in freezers at 3 elementary schools. And finally, for food services, serving lines at 5 schools. This award is for the updated cafeteria serving lines in 5 of our schools. Item 11 is audiovisual equipment. This is an award for an annual purchasing list of audiovisual equipment as needed throughout the next school year. And finally, report on electricity. Finally, this is to report that we reviewed the bid results for electricity services and signed a 2-year contract with Washington Gas and Electric. There are increases over the prior 5-year award that had been in place. Working with our energy consultant, we established estimates for higher rates and planned for increases within the total inflationary impacts of the FY25 budget development process. The results of the bid were in line with those estimates and planned increases and are accounted for in the FY25 budget totals for your approval later this evening. Questions?
Yeah, I do have just a couple things here that the bus contractors contacted me with was, with this sole source, their vans?
They're vans, yes.
Vans, yes. And they don't need a CDL to drive a van, am I?
They do not.
They do not, okay. And then do they insure them just like a school bus, or is it MABE, or do they do their own insurance?
They would have their own insurance.
Okay, they have their own insurance. And then when we pick up these children, do we go right directly to their house? Is that, and we're not doing that on a public road where it stops and there's no lights and anything like that?
Correct. So these are 2 additional service providers.
Right.
You're already under contract with a third.
Right.
We've actually exceeded the capacity of that original service provider.
Okay.
But yet, we're still talking about a very small number of students, I would say about 5-ish, 7 total students. And these are very unique cases, I believe exclusively for non-public so far. So these are for students traveling to non-public settings out of county. And there are scenarios where a student receiving special ed services, for whatever reason, we're unable to effectively provide the service on the bus. State changed Code of Maryland regulations maybe 3-ish years ago to allow sort of this type of transportation. And so we only employ this when we have to, when we have a scenario.
And this doesn't affect anybody that has a bus contract or anything like this?
It does not.
Okay.
No. And many of these kids would start on a bus, perhaps, but not be able to, we may not be able to continue providing transportation service that way.
All right. They just wondered about that, and I said I would ask a question or two.
And they're as needed. So,
Right.
By state procurement law and previous audit recommendations, we bring you any contract in advance if we believe it could exceed $25,000 in a total year. And so that's why they're on here proactively.
And I know in the last 20 years, we've really tried to bring so many of these students back into Carroll County and save us a lot of money. So, well, thank you.
Sure.
So, Ms. Herbert, before we move, I have a bunch of other questions, but
Sure.
before we move off of that one, could I ask some
Sure.
questions about those same items?
I'm done. Yeah, go ahead. Right.
So, John, thanks for, I understand you just said how if expenditures could exceed 25,000, you bring it to us for approval. I just want to make sure I understand what we're approving here as part of these sole source procurements, because it says that it looks like these might actually be cheaper alternatives than what we're currently doing today. So do you anticipate that that's going to be the case?
I'll see if Mike wants to say differently. I think that's sometimes case by case, but it certainly can be. You have some familiarity with your cost per bus route for a special ed route versus a regular ed route. And sometimes that might have to do with the number of students. There might be 2 or 3. I don't think it ever gets to be too many students on a single school bus going to multiple out-of-county locations. And so part of the cost of that is time and miles. In this case, we are bringing a vehicle directly to a student's house and then directly to the setting. And so overall, it could be less expensive than a bus route on the whole. But that's not our primary consideration. Our primary consideration is being able to get a student to school. And in some cases, maybe they've been off the bus and haven't been to school in a bit, and this is the alternative where we can get them back into their educational program more quickly. But I'll invite Ms. Whittle and Mr. Hardesty if they want to add or fill in the blank.
I was just, my comment was that I know Sunset has a contract or something for them for several years to make sure that they move these children around, and, they don't want to lose that contract, so that has,
We in fact need more special ed buses on the road every day, not fewer. So
I get it,
Yeah, I was just trying to understand what exactly we were
right,
approving,
yeah.
because there's not really any numbers
There's no
here.
numbers, I know,
And it's
but-
like, as they come up on a one-off
you're gonna have to bring them
basis.
back
We're
to
talking
us.
about a very finite group of students, so I want to be careful
Right.
in how I proceed and what I say. But obviously, we try to utilize special transportation through a school bus first for a student, but sometimes a student may require supports or an environment that is different than that. So kind of in the progression, if as we've said before, in the restrictiveness of what we do in special ed services, this is kind of a beyond special transportation as we typically define it, through a bus, either to one of our schools or to a non-public center. But a lot of times students need more specialized supports than what we can provide on a bus in a larger setting, if that makes sense.
So the existing service provider before these is Freedom Taxi. That's the name, and we've been in operation with them for 2 years now. They're able to allocate 3 vans for service in our county. They have business in Howard and I think at least Howard. We've now met their capacity. They don't have another van available for us, and so I don't know if those 7 students are the ones in Freedom Taxi, or if there's 6 and this is the 7th. But for instance, right now we have another student who we're going to need service for, and so we're bringing you these procurement vehicles right now for that reason, to make that available. Or I guess we've made it available, but we know it's going to exceed. We know that it reasonably could exceed 25,000 every year, so we're bringing it to you for approval, and that's normal for us. We always do that.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, again, I appreciate it. Again, I come from the contracting world, so again, if you don't know the answers, I hope you do, but is this like an IDIQ, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity type of contract? Is this a firm fixed price? There's a price per mile. What kind of contract? Because I am too disturbed that we don't have like a max dollar figure or just an idea of what the cost will be. Is it a time and materials contract? Is it?
I'll let Mr. Hardesty come up
Sure.
and answer some of the details. Partly, there's no max value or max price because it could be X number of students.
Right.
But
Yeah, that's why I was wondering if it's a firm fixed price, time and materials kind of contract.
The price is based on miles and time, so from the student's home to the school and back again. All these vehicles also have a bus assistant. With the youth in transition vehicle, those are staff from youth in transition that are much more familiar with the students that go there. I think we will have 2 students on that van eventually. The other out of town will only have 1 student on it. Okay. And most of the others with Freedom Taxi have 1 or at most 2.
I understand. I would just feel better if there was a not to exceed thing on this, rather, because again, like you said, we're approving a contract that just doesn't have an end dollar amount on it, and that's why but I'm assuming that the contract language allows us to cancel for cause and all that stuff.
It does, and we certainly aren't going to come close to 25,000 to close out this school year.
Great.
We will have an estimated cost when we bring you the contracts for this next school year.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So the ones that we have now, they did a contract? Is that what, I mean, they did a bid? These guys? These are two new people.
Right.
That,
I believe they're all three, the existing, and these two are sole source procurement. There's not competition. There's not, providers out there waiting to be on board. Yeah.
yeah, right. That's what I was trying to figure this out, and I just want to make sure that I didn't have any bus drivers losing their lines and all that stuff. And it was just like making sure this all sounded fair because there was no numbers there. So, and I get it, and so, okay. Well, if there's maybe, Donna, that's what you and I can do next.
It's just a typical time and materials contract.
Yeah.
My concern is there just doesn't seem to be a number on there, but.
Okay, but, we need it. I mean, the wheels on the bus, that's the only way we can get them there. So-
Right. Well, I mean, it does say, it's pending the number of students attending the school. So we won't know till September if there's,
And it may go up and down throughout the year
Right.
as well.
Yes,
That's the norm.
absolutely, yeah. All right, are there any more questions about the buses? Yes.
not about
Okay,
that one.
Okay, all right, go ahead, Ms. Savigny, and thank you. Thank you all for those answers, because they were concerned, and I couldn't answer them. So, and I didn't, we weren't hiding anything. It's just one of those things that, and if there aren't people out, people don't own a business like that, well, we need more bus drivers. Now we're going to need more of this kind of business.
We still need more bus drivers.
Oh, okay, we
and
still need more bus
We'd love
drivers.
to have more special ed buses running. every
Okay,
day.
there you go. We're putting all kind of ads out tonight.
Good for your PSA again.
Yeah, right, yeah. I still have my CDL, but I never did a school bus, so it's, I think I'll pass. I'll ship a horse. Okay, Ms. Savigny, go ahead.
Mr. O'Neill, I did have a couple of other questions, but on the first one for the paving at the various schools, I wasn't able to look up what our estimates were in the CIP. Are these relatively in line with what we were expecting the expenditures to be that are in the current CIP?
I'll ask Ray if he wants to come up, but.
They're consistent.
Well, Jim's still here, yeah. So.
Having a party back there.
Thank you, Mr.
By himself.
We receive sort of a fixed amount in the CIP from the county every year, and we assess sites, and there's usually a little bit of disagreement as to our assessment and other people's assessment as to which parking lot needs paving sooner, and then I guess accomplish what we can with the money that the county's provided in a given summer. And then sometimes you get into what's under the surface and that sort of thing, which might change the calculus, but we try to accomplish what we can based on the assessment that they do each year of the.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's not like we say, these are the 4 jobs that we're going to do, and we bid them out,
we then
as
do
specifically,
that, yeah.
like, as part of the CIP, though, we don't necessarily identify exactly which schools we're going to do. We say that we have this much need of paving projects.
Yes, deep back in the CIP after our major projects is a section on paving, and it lists a bunch of schools that we have listed as the priorities in that order. Go ahead.
We have more to pave.
Yes, we have a lot more to pave, and sometimes those priorities change around a little bit based on projects that come up and get funded, and we may want to do that project in front of the paving or stuff like that.
Right. Okay, so we prioritize them. We say, this is about how much money we have to work with, and so these are the 4 projects that we can get done this year.
And we are pleased to find that the bids of all the inflationary things, the paving has not jumped as high as the HVACs and other costs.
Okay, that's what that's basically the crux of what I was trying to get at, is that, okay, have we seen huge increases in these versus what we're expecting?
We were pleasantly surprised with these numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
yeah, I keep crossing my fingers Manchester Elementary will creep back up that list a little bit faster. My shocks are starting to have it on the Jeep.
I sent that shout out to you, Ms. Patek. That's why I said there may not always be agreement on the prioritization.
Anything else, Ms. Savigny?
Just the questions on the Category 9, so those are all food service budget items, so those come
Yes.
through food service?
Through the
Okay.
food service program fund, yeah.
Okay. And just curious about the lines that we're doing in the cafeterias. There's a pretty wide fluctuation in terms of what the costs are at each school. Is that what?
So unique, Karen Sarno. My general understanding is it may have to do with size and scope and amount of replacement, but Karen operates a business model on meals served, and so she's trying to lay out a design that meets meals being served and also might encourage some opportunity to expand a little bit.
Okay.
But I honestly would need to get back to you on the specifics as to any given project, why one's more than another one.
Okay, but we're still living within the budget of what she's got to work with, and
The food
no
service
need to
funds.
increase costs to students.
No
and
plan to increase food costs. The food service fund is healthy as it's ever been under her leadership.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then the audio visual equipment, there was a statement in here that the buying guides are issued listing items individually. Prices are updated as required through the course of the contract in accordance with the constant changes in technology costs and pricing. So does that mean that these costs aren't really locked in for the 1 year of the contract? It's just what they are at the beginning of the contract, and they could fluctuate significantly?
I believe them to be locked in. I'll have to inquire and follow up with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you know. I don't know that sitting here tonight.
Okay.
If
Okay,
you
that's
look
why I
at-
thought that they were typically locked in, like we vote on, these are the locked-in prices for this pick list, right?
I would have believed them to be locked in.
Okay.
You, the board, could always set that item aside and approve the rest if you'd like me to clarify that at June before you vote on it.
Okay. I think I'd probably be willing to provide my approval, just assuming that they are locked in, and if you could let us know if that's
Sure.
not the case.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And then, just looking at the electricity, the last item, the fact that they were increased, the cost increased by 18%. And Dr. McCabe, you did say that was all sort of appropriately budgeted in as part of our budget process. So we accounted for that.
Yes.
It's not that this is going to be an overage in any way.
Right.
Okay.
Correct. And if, when we do the budget presentations over time, there's usually the inflationary impact section, and then maybe on a second slide, Rob might break that out. This is the utilities component that you've been seeing. $900,000 was the impact in 1 year. It's been a 5-year award that's expiring, and we've got some pretty favorable rates 5 years ago. The good news, and I'll take this as good news, is that our energy consultant made some assessments, both to help us with budget development, back in the summer, really, or fall, and then through the bid process, was pretty accurate with those assessments, a little bit to the positive even, so slightly under what his estimates were for projected increases. So you're solid for fiscal 25 with the numbers in the budget as been presented, or as your request was made to the county.
Okay, great. Because I remember for several years it was usually good news, right? Like, oh, and we were able to get a contract at a little bit better rates this year, and there was a lot of good news for several years, and now this year it's going the other direction.
Because Mr. Prokop deserves a pat on the back as well. He was in the office early on before budget development, saying we really need to get the energy consultant engaged early because that contract's going to expire in October, and there's going to be a fairly significant impact. So.
Right. Okay. I just saw Mr. Hardesty pat Mr.
Yeah, he
Prokop
did.
on the back,
He
so
did get a
thank you for doing that for us,
He
Mr.
did get a pat on the back. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
With that, I am.
Mr. Whistler has one more comment.
Yeah, I apologize. One more comment. Item number 2, I noticed that the low bidder was excluded because of a problem with the State Department of Assessments Taxation, I guess. We weren't able to go out and call for another rebid, or is it time of the essence and we have to? That's a 10% difference. That's why I asked.
Yeah. More of a
Number 2.
yeah.
No, we received those 2 prices. Obviously, CUS Modular Group did not bid. And this is a very small family of contractors in Maryland. you're lucky to get 3 if, you know, and since they didn't know, we've worked with Prevost for many years, and that's a good price, so we're happy with that.
Okay. It's just sad to see 20,000 walk out the door.
Yes, timing-wise, we're fine, you know, on getting this done this summer.
Thank you.
Yes, Sandyman absolutely needs this. They are very desperate to get this going, so yeah, if we had to bid it out, we wouldn't have it in time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. And now I need a motion for the approval of transfer of bus contracts. By Dr. Dorsey, seconded by Ms. Battaglia.
We have 2 separate transfers of bus contractors this evening, each of which establish new contractors into our system. The first is a transfer of 1 contract from Palmerino Bus Service LLC to Levi's Bus Line LLC. The second is the transfer of 1 contract from Clover Transportation LLC to On the Town Transportation, Inc. Any questions?
Comments? Questions?
I did have one. Just curious on the town transportation one. It's an interesting name. Typically, when we have a bus contractor, it's more like a family-run business or a particular contractor name. This sounds almost more like an entertainment service or something.
There is no disco ball in the bus.
Although that might help with ridership. So these are both items, whether you vote on them one at a time or both, are new contractors to us, which is good news, a trend that suddenly has emerged, whereas for years we were losing contractors over the years. On the Town has a separate business that does provide other transportation services, non-school system related, and so it's carrying over the name of their existing business.
Okay, but it's still truly like school buses.
Yeah,
that we're getting.
this is cool. They are buying
They
a
aren't
bus
party
on a
buses.
route, yes.
They are not party buses,
just
Mr. Bigney.
Okay.
But if they are, I'll get my CDL.
Mrs. Vigney, we had just looked at that. That was on number 7 of the bid award, where this on the town transportation.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
All right, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now we're going to move to, I need a motion for the approval of limited right of entry agreement with the town of Hampstead for water exploration. And thank you for coming, Mr. Hampstead.
I'm Jim Rohr. I'm the town manager for the town of Hampstead. Thank you for having me. Thank you for entertaining this discussion. Basically, Ray laid it out for you pretty well. We're looking around in that area of the town for some additional production wells, and our hydrologist, who's a consultant for the town, he has located 4 possible locations on the grounds of North Carroll Middle School, along with a couple others just in that area, a couple on SHA property, that we would just like your approval as a right of entry agreement to try some exploratory wells to see if there would be any production coming out of the water below. If it was found that they would be productive, of course, we would come back and we would work with you all again on a way to access it again and make them production wells. So this is just basically giving us the ability to do some exploratory wells. We'd like to do it this summer when it would be of minimal impact to the school. It would be about a 2-week process from when we would come in to when we would leave. If there are not going to be any not productive, within 2 weeks after us leaving, the grass will be grown back over. It'll look like we were never there.
Dr. McCabe. Okay, all right. Ms. Savigny.
I think this. Mike here. I think this all makes sense. I just wanted to double check with Mr. O'Mealy. This has been reviewed for legal sufficiency.
It was reviewed, and I made some revisions as well.
Okay.
For example, I added the provision on employment of sex offenders, which we typically put in most of our agreements, and I made some other provisions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
All right, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank
Good.
you. Thank you for coming.
Yep.
And now I need a motion for the approval of the design development documents for Cranberry Station Elementary Kindergarten Pre-Kindergarten Addition Project.
So moved.
By Dr. Dorsey, seconded by Ms. Battaglia.
I'm going to say a little bit more than I normally do in the approval section here, but this is a bit complex, so I'd like to explain a little bit up front. So starting with this agenda item, we have 4 items in a row for your approval of design development documents for additions at schools. It's only every so often that we move capacity projects through the school construction process. So I'd just like to take a minute to go over the stages of a project. Once a project concept is adopted into the Educational Facilities Master Plan, it is then approved by the board as a CIP project, and a funding request is made to the state and county. At the county level, design funding is initially approved. The traditional next step is to commission an architectural and engineering feasibility study to determine the viability and options for the project. A planning committee or educational specifications committee is then formed, consisting largely of school stakeholders to define the educational program requirements of the space. From the educational specifications, we then begin the formal design, starting with schematic designs, which are the first step in design documents, but are still general drawings of the project building and systems design. The next stage are design development documents, which is what we are bringing this evening. Design development documents include much greater construction details than schematic designs and inform a more accurate budget estimate. Once design development documents are approved, design continues to progress, leading eventually to a much more formal detailed stage, which is approval of construction design documents. These more detailed plans are what we use to issue project bids. We receive refined budget updates at each stage of the process and work to make adjustments as needed. The initial project budget, when a project is first adopted into the CIP, is based mainly on the state worksheet, comparing the state's average cost per square foot for the year to the anticipated square footage of the project. The feasibility study offers a more specific budget estimate based on the feasible options in the study, but this is still very general. The design development documents are the first place where the educational specifications from the planning committee are tied directly to more formal design. The budget estimate is adjusted at this time as the process is now becoming much more detailed and specific. If needed, we begin to make adjustments in the design in order to lower costs to align with the budget. At the construction design stage, we have a tremendous amount of detail and are much closer to the time of bid and have an awareness of the experience of the bid market. If necessary at this stage, we may look at value engineering items to lower costs and overall design modifications that help align with budget and our anticipation of the bid market. We also often release bids with a series add alternatives to create as much flexibility and in the bidding phase. Ultimately, reducing square footage has the most impact on lowering a project's cost. Once the bids are received and reviewed, we know what the final actual cost of a project will be. As you know, we have seen the bidding market moving steadily ahead in recent years due to factors such as inflation within the market, volume, etc. While we take each of these steps seriously with every project, in this current construction climate, we are hypersensitive to budget estimates at each stage in the process. You will see from the cover sheet, as a reminder, that the Cranberry Station K pre-K addition budget estimate was 9% higher than the original CIP budget when we reached the schematic design phase. Therefore, at that stage of the design, we made a decision to reduce total space by 789 square feet from the educational specifications. Even with the reduction, the budget estimate with this design development document submission is 6% higher than the CIP budget request. We already have made decisions to reduce costs on items such as construction materials and additive alternate items, which may sometimes occur later in a project through value engineering. Therefore, as we move forward in design, there are limited options other than to further reduce square footage from the educational specifications. We will continue to work on all options to lower project costs. Questions?
Ms. Savigny.
I really appreciate all of the backdrop for that, because I know when we were at the prior stage, we were seeing estimates that were probably closer to $2 million over on the various projects, right? Which was kind of an alarming number, right? And we knew that we needed to do something, like you said. So it looks like we've gone back and reduced the square footage estimates. And I appreciate that. And across the 4 projects, we're now only off by about $300,000 from the original estimates versus, in excess of $2 million, which is a huge impact. So thank you for that. Wanting to understand, so we did reduce the square footage, it looks like, on each of the 4 projects. Were we able to achieve that in a way that we don't think that we're compromising, right, like the needs of the space?
Bill? Yes, so when we made the square footage reductions, it was in collaboration with the planning committees for each of, for these projects, as well as the administration was involved in looking at the options. Most of the reductions were either in storage, workroom areas, or there were some instances where classrooms were oversized just because of the way the walls laid out, the exterior walls. We did bring those back closer to the ed spec, but everyone, the planning committee and everyone that we've worked with felt comfortable with the plans before you tonight, that it's still, they're good spaces and they do achieve the instructional goals. They'll support the instruction. So.
And
Okay.
I think to Mr. Kane, again, ideally, when we were talking at the beginning, as the planning committee members, we just sort of laid out ideal situations. Like, for example, for kindergarten, we need at least two bathrooms. And again, that seemed ideal.
Correct.
At the time of the conversation, but again, as we move through the process, I know we've changed that, and I think we talked too about the challenges of constructing the smaller additions versus a complete school, so to speak.
Right. There's a premium to build smaller additions because for a contractor to mobilize, there's a kind of a built-in cost, and the bigger the project, it spreads out over all that square footage, but the smaller the project, it just raises the cost per square foot. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, smaller additions do tend to be a little higher from a cost per square foot perspective. So, and the other thing with the small additions is, a lot of it has to do at the bid table, how much competition we get. And they are rare across the state, so they're harder to look at. There were 10 additions built last year in Maryland. Here's what the average cost per square foot is. Most of the school construction work is new schools or full renovations, so it makes it a little trickier with estimating and budgeting, just by nature of the size of them. So.
And that's actually a follow-up question that I had was the estimate per square foot for each one of the 4 projects is different. And Cranberry Station, I think, was the most expensive of them all at $617. So what impacts that, and why would one school be close to $100 more per square foot?
So, for example, at Cranberry Station's project is mostly addition. Very little renovation. I think it was under 100 square feet of renovations where the entrance is that we're going to tie into. Whereas, and renovation costs per square foot tend to be much lower because the foundation is already there, the roof is already there. Whereas new square footage, obviously you have to build all those things. So renovation square footage tends to be, the cost tends to be lower per square foot. That school had mostly new construction, whereas the other schools had more renovation. Tawnytown, to make the connection, we had to renovate a classroom. At Friendship, we had to do the same. On the budgeting side, the way the state formula works, they give you a dollar amount per square foot that is the same for new construction or renovation. So when we build our budgets, we get the full credit for all of that money cost per square foot. So That's why the schools that had a little more renovation, their cost per square foot was a little lower, which came in closer to what the original budget was. So there's more to it than that, because the estimator looked at each of these projects, the design, and did actual measurements, takeoffs. Different school. One school might have to relocate a water line where we're building the addition. The other school may not. So there's other costs that are specific to each project that influence it. But generally, that's kind of why you do see a variance between the projects.
Right, so it's not actually a dollar amount per square footage that's applied, it's more of this is the overall cost of the project, and there happens to be this much square footage involved, and we back into that.
Correct.
that
For
dollar
this
amount.
design development cost estimate, they're actually doing the estimate based on the details in the documents, and then I just do a calculation to figure out what the cost per square foot is, just as an informational item, which then helps us in the future try to estimate what these additions would cost. We try to average it. The more projects you have, you can average it. But
Is there anything to be done at the state level? I mean, kind of Dr. Dorsey's comment about, and I think it's in here, about how additions are less efficient, right, than a new project, right? Or not less efficient, but not as cost effective, I guess. The dollar amounts per square foot are higher. Is there anything to be done at the state level, like discussions to be had to say, like, okay, there needs to be more dollars allocated to smaller projects, just because?
So their formula for determining how much they'll pay for a project has, one of the major components is the cost per square foot that they publish every June for the next fiscal year. And they have a formula for figuring out how many square feet per student, or for a kindergarten pre-K edition, they basically say, okay, you've justified 2 new kindergarten classrooms, they'll give 1,800 gross square feet per classroom. So like they have a way to get to a square footage and then multiply it times the dollar amount. I don't foresee them changing that specific to small additions because they vary so much. It would create issues for them trying to apply different formulas across all kinds of different projects. But the one thing that they do allow now is once you get the bids, if the bids come in higher, in an unusual circumstance, if they're much higher than the state published cost per square foot, you can go and ask for an increase to the state maximum allocation. You have to show them that it was an unusual circumstance or whatever. But unfortunately, that's after you've gotten the bid. So it can help a lot of times recoup some local costs that you've spent up front. Okay. But it's good that they're doing it, to recognize that there are times where the formula doesn't work out, but it is, timing-wise, it makes it a little challenging as far as budgeting.
Right, right. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you for that clarification, because that's kind of what I was trying to get at. Like, is there any way to recoup some of the local expenditures that we would have to put forth? But are the commissioners aware of the differentials? I guess we're not really at that stage yet. Is that right?
So we've been in contact with the Bureau of Management and Budget, the staff person that we work with on the school capital budget. They're aware. They were a member of the planning committee, so they're aware of where we are. The commissioners have a proposed capital budget out with a dollar amount for these projects planned for construction. The state construction funding, we requested it in 25, but they did not provide construction funding this year, so we'll have to ask for the state share in FY 26, which timing-wise still works out with when we plan to start construction, but it does bring in a little bit of unknown how much we'll get from the state, because the state hasn't published their cost per square foot number yet. So they'll do it in June, and then we'll start working on the capital request for FY 26 this summer, which will come to the board in September. But the state share and how much state money is still somewhat of an unknown, and that can influence the local share. Generally, always, the local share is based on how much we get from the state. So, the budget here is somewhat preliminary that we're comparing these estimates to, because the state is still somewhat We're not quite sure. Ideally, if costs per square foot are rising, what our estimator is saying, they would raise their cost per square foot. A typical year, they might raise it 3 to 4%. They might, if they raised it 6 or 7%, the state share would probably cover the differences we're talking about. But again, we won't know until this summer.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. And I guess just to be very clear, what we're approving with these decisions tonight is to move to the next phase, to go to the more detailed construction documents, right? Like, so we're not approving budgets or anything like that. It's just, okay, we're comfortable enough with this to move to the next stage, right?
Correct. And the one of the requirements of the state public school construction program is we submit our design development documents to them for review. So once the board approves the documents, then we submit them for state review.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I just want to say thank you for all the work that went into revising these, knowing that we were going to be struggling with the inflation in the estimates. The great job to try to get these pretty darn close to what we were originally thinking the budgets were. So thank you for all of that effort.
Yeah, well, just real quick, I want to recognize, because she did come, Jen Lyon with Mosley Architects was the project manager. She led the team that really helped kind of get the design where it is and helped figure out how to make those reductions. So, it was a big team of folks, and, I just want to thank all of them because it was a lot of work, so.
Yeah, I think it's just really important to highlight for anybody watching. There's always armchair quarterbacks out there that just say, hey, you build a project and it goes out of budget and you just ask for more money. That's not what we do here. The staff is exceptional in that they manage costs, and if costs rise, they take action and they make little minor adjustments that keep it at or near what the taxpayers were expecting to pay. And just a remarkable job. And I really appreciate you thinking about not only the students, the staff, but the taxpayers. Thank you so much.
And I would just like to add, the whole process is just very enlightening and informative. And I guess until you actually get involved with, I mean, I've seen and I've heard what you all do over the years, but actually being involved with the planning committee certainly has been insightful.
Is that a hint for later, Dr.
Pardon?
Dorsey? Is that a hint for one of the later agenda items?
Yes.
I'm up
Could
for it.
very well be.
Yes, she's up for the challenge. She is up for the challenge. All right, I call for the vote for the Cranberry Station Elementary. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously.
Ms. Herbert, do we want to state for the record that Ms. Battaglia had to go, so that was a vote of four
Yes.
4-0?
Yes, she will.
Okay.
4-0. Okay. And now I need a motion for the approval of the design development for the Friendship Valley Elementary Kindergarten, Pre-Kindergarten Pride Edition project.
So moved.
By Dr. Dorsey, seconded by?
I guess I'll second.
Okay, by Mr. Whistler.
Following a similar theme as with the Cranberry Station edition, the schematic design stage budget estimate for the Friendship Valley Kindergarten, Pre-Kindergarten Pride Edition was 17% higher than the CIP budget request. Accordingly, 2,041 square feet were removed from the design based on the educational specifications. Even with that reduction, the budget estimate with this design development document submission is 5% higher than the CIP budget request. Again, we already have made decisions to reduce costs on items such as construction materials and additive alternate items. Therefore, as we move forward in design, there are limited options other than to further reduce square footage from the educational specifications. We'll continue to work on all options to lower project costs. Questions?
All right.
I kind of asked all of my questions all
Yeah,
together.
yeah, right. Okay, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the approval of the design development documents for the Sandy Mount Elementary Kindergarten, Pre-Kindergarten Addition project.
So moved.
By Dr. Dorsey, seconded by Mr. Whistler again. Thank you.
With the Sandy Mount Elementary pre-K project, the schematic design stage budget estimate was 2% higher than the CIP budget request. The total square footage of the design was reduced by 1,193 square feet. Even with that reduction, the budget estimate with this design development document submission is 5% lower than the CIP budget request. The project design team will continue to work to keep costs as low as possible as we move forward.
All right, I call for the vote.
I'm sorry.
Kate, you do.
I did actually have one
Okay.
extra question on this one. So this one, we actually were able to get down lower than the original estimate.
Yes.
Is that, I know the Sandy Mount location was a little bit problematic with like where to position
Yes.
it. Like, is that how you were able to kind of, were able to find a way to get creative with the square footage? Is that?
We were able to, this one's gone through a few iterations with tightening up the additions. At one point, we had 2 additions, and we kind of landed with site complications. We tightened it up and landed with kind of 1 addition more in the back. The other thing that's helping here a little bit with the budget is between this approval of the schematic and design development, the state had indicated that they would participate, because this one we're building kind of a whole new early childhood wing. Originally, we thought we would add 2 kindergarten classrooms and 1 new pre-K. The problem was we couldn't add it anywhere near the existing kindergarten and existing pre-K classrooms. So the state kind of agreed that it made sense to build a whole new wing. So the state said they would participate in the additional square footage. Okay. So, and we communicated that with the county staff as well. So the state share went up. The expected state share went up, which increased the budget a little bit. So that also helped.
Okay, great, fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Kane.
All right, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the approval of the design development documents for the Tawnytown Elementary Kindergarten Pre-Kindergarten Addition Project.
So moved.
By Dr. Dorsey, seconded by
I'll second.
Ms. Battaglia. Thank you.
As for
That was Miss
Oh, Ms.
Savigny.
Savigny. Oh, God. Yeah, I'm used to that, right. I'm in another world. Okay, sorry.
As for the Tawnytown Elementary pre-K addition, the schematic design stage budget estimate was 9% higher than the CIP budget request. As a result, 809 square feet was removed from the design based on the educational specifications. Even with that reduction, the budget estimate with this design development document submission is 1% higher than the CIP budget request. We already have made decisions to reduce costs on items such as construction materials and additive alternate items. Therefore, as we move forward in design, there are limited options other than to further reduce square footage from the educational specifications. We will continue to work on all options to lower project costs. Questions?
All right, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the approval of appointment of board member to serve on the Construction Planning Committee for the Freedom Elementary School Addition.
So moved.
By Ms. Savigny, seconded by Dr. Dorsey.
The next 2 items are for projects just now starting design. The commissioners have recognized the additions for Freedom and Sykesville that followed the work of what we like to call our SARC, our Southern Area Redistricting Committee, and the board's decision in the prior Educational Facilities Master Plan and CIP request. They'll now enter the process of developing educational specifications through the work of a construction planning committee. We always ask to have a board member or 2 to serve on each construction planning committee. We are seeking a board member to serve on the Freedom Elementary School Addition Construction Planning Committee, or 2.
And I will suggest Ms. Battaglia, and then second, Mr. Whistler. Any other comments? I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need approval of appointment of board members to serve on Construction Planning Committee for the Sykesville Middle School Addition. By Dr. Dorsey, seconded by
I'll second.
Savigny. And I will recommend Dr. Dorsey and Mr. Whistler again. Comments? Questions? I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition? No, and it passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the approval of annexation petition to City of Westminster for Cranberry Station Elementary and Winters Mill High School property. By Dr. Dorsey, seconded by
I'll second.
Ms. Savigny.
The kindergarten, pre-kindergarten addition at Cranberry Station requires an additional water allocation to the property. Per the City of Westminster's water and sewer allocation policy, the increase of the water allocation to Cranberry Station Elementary requires the annexation of the property into the City of Westminster. The petition to annex has been reviewed for legal sufficiency by legal counsel, and it is satisfactory. Questions?
I was just going to make an interesting comment of how, like, last time we tried that, it didn't really work. But we don't have any concerns with,
No, not this time.
okay, not this time.
Okay, let's hurry up and vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the approval of Transportation Services Reimbursement Formula FY25.
So moved.
By Dr. Dorsey, seconded by Mr. Whistler. Thank you.
Annually in May, we bring for approval the Transportation Services Reimbursement Formula. We are one of 17 counties who use a reimbursement formula to compensate our independent bus contractors for their service. The formula components are updated based on inflationary costs, but the structure reflects the work of a joint committee which met in 2021. The board accepted the report of the joint committee and implemented recommendations in FY22, which carry forward today. The formula is reflected in the FY25 budget totals. Mr. Hardesty is here for any discussion.
I just want to say, I want to thank all the bus contractors. They've got us through some tough times, and they've been very cordial, and they've worked very hard. We've all worked very hard together, and I really can't thank them enough. And I definitely want this formula approved, because if we don't have wheels, the children don't get to school. Ms. Savigny.
I had a couple of quick questions about, Mr. Hardesty, could you remind me what prime was last year at the time of the calculation? Because it's gone up pretty substantially,
I
right?
believe it was 5.5%, so it went up 3% to 8.5.
Okay, so that's part of the driver of why the PVA has gone up so much.
And the price of the bus.
Buses.
Right.
Bus prices are increasing dramatically every year. The price that you see here for a regular ed bus, $148,839. I expect to be at least 10% higher next year.
Okay.
Actually, buses that are going to have to be purchased now, but it will be in next year's formula.
Right. Okay. And again, this has all been accounted for in the budget for next year already. These
Yes.
increases.
Yes.
Okay.
Question.
Yes, Mr. Whistler.
Mr. Hartsey, thank you so much. Again, I hope the 7% increase helps attract and retain drivers, because again, we really have a problem with that. I remember last year, the bus calculation, we removed Bluebird or one of the contractors for bus. Did we put that back into the equation?
We did remove it because the difference in price
Right.
with
Was an
Bluebird
outlier.
versus the other two manufacturers
Right.
was significant, like a $25,000 difference. The current prices that we're receiving indicate that they are more in line now with the other, so all three are more in line, and we will include that back in.
Okay, so that will be included back in.
Yes, but
Great,
very
okay.
few of our contractors historically have purchased Bluebird buses.
Right. Okay, yeah, I was just curious, because I remember that was an issue last year.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you so much. Again, I appreciate all you do to interact with our contractors and keep the wheels moving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other questions, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the approval of appointments.
So moved.
By Dr. Dorsey, seconded by
I'll second.
Ms. Savigny.
I have 3 recommendations for appointment this evening. First, Jody Weaver, from Assistant Principal at Northwest Middle School to Principal at Northwest Middle School. Secondly, John Courtney, from Assistant Principal at Tawnytown Elementary to Principal at Mount Airy Elementary.
Or Elmer Wolf. Elmer Wolf.
And finally,
Is it Elmer Wolf?
This is Elmer Wolf.
did I say Elmer Wolf?
You said Mount Airy.
I meant, oh yes, it should be Mount Airy Elementary, yes.
Oh, okay. So the
Yes.
document says
Yes.
Elmer Wolf, but it should be
Elmer.
Mount Airy?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And finally, Frank Clowder from assistant principal at Ebb Valley to principal at Elmer Wolf Elementary. Yes. So the
Oh, those
the
are
sheet-
switched?
Yeah,
Switched.
those two are switched. Your sheet is incorrect. Yeah.
Okay.
So Courtney is going to.
Courtney's going to Mount Airy.
Courtney is going to Mount Airy, and Frank is going to Elmer Wolf. Yes, sorry about that.
All right, now we have this all corrected.
Correct.
All right.
To the right place.
Yes, we want them to go to the right school. All right, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, it passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the approval of personnel action items. By Mr. Whistler, thank you. Yeah, he got one in. Seconded by Dr. Dorsey. Take it away, Dr. McKay.
On the monthly personnel action report, there is one new hire, one release from contract, and one leave of absence.
Comments? Questions? I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. All right. Agenda item 6.0, approval of the FY25 operating food service debt service and capital improvement. We are scheduled to take action on the budget based upon revised revenue figures from both the state and county. We'll need to approve operating budget categories, the food service fund budget, the debt service fund budget, and the final CIP budget. I'll ask Dr. McCabe to provide background information and then call for each motion. So now, may I have a motion to approve the FY25 operating budget?
So moved.
We got all three. I'm going to pick Miss Savigny.
Everybody now.
All right, and it's going to be seconded by Dr. Dorsey.
Okay, the commissioners have established a proposed budget to public review and comment, culminating with their public budget hearing earlier this week, which provides the board with $6 million above the county's plan original FY25 figure. This is $4.8 million less than in your proposed budget request to them. With the General Assembly now over, we also have final state FY25 funding amounts. While there was very limited reshuffling among some of the state funding programs, overall we saw no substantive change in final state figures from the governor's budget at the beginning of the legislative session. Ultimately, the board must adopt final budget categories that reflect final revenue figures prior to the county adopting their final general fund budget. We've made adjustments to reconcile to the final state funding figures and the total revenue in the county proposed budget. In order to balance between our total request in your proposed budget and the amount in the county proposed budget, we needed to make total adjustments of $4.8 million. In order to achieve this, we made some smaller reductions and deferred the technology costs for computer replacements until a future budget cycle. Generally, we did not buy replacement laptops at the elementary level to allow more time to consider policy issues and based upon timing of device warranties. We will be able to replace some student devices by utilizing remaining federal ESSER funds before they expire this fall. This decision to utilize ESSER funds in this manner is permissible under the program and supports our students. At this point, we will need separate board actions to approve, number 1, the final operating budget categories, 2, the food services program fund, 3, the debt service fund, and 4, final CIP project budget totals now that we have a final state CIP and a proposed county community improvement program. So for each of the 4 of these approvals, we will display totals on the screen for your vote.
All right. Now, yes, Ms. Savigny.
So, Dr. McCabe, thanks for that background of what we need to reduce in order to get there. And as you talked about, this is going to require some policy decisions, right, like on technology.
Yes.
And I believe, Mr. O'Neill, we're not going to be the only school system in the state that's going to have not a one-to-one relationship at the elementary level?
We're like every school system in Maryland. I believe every system, but if not most systems, use federal funding, mostly ESSER money, to move in real time during the pandemic to kind of a 1-to-1 ratio, and are now struggling to figure out how they can sustain that infrastructure going forward. And so I think we'll be far from the only county operating or grappling with that kind of an operational challenge.
No, and in fact, I met with the other superintendents around the state last Friday, and that was one of the topics that we discussed, and everyone is in a similar circumstance right now.
Okay.
And the staff to support it.
Right.
Nobody
Yes,
has
that's
that.
that's another,
Right.
yeah, that's another biggie. All right, any other comments or questions? All right, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now, may I have a motion to approve the FY25 Food Services Fund budget? By Mr. Whistler, seconded by?
I'll second.
By Ms. Savigny. You guys are changing up on me here. Okay. Yes. Comments, questions? I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now, may I have a motion to approve the FY25 Debt Service Fund budget? By Dr. Dorsey, seconded by Mr. Whistler. Comments? Questions? I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Now, I need a motion to approve the FY25 CIP budget project totals. By Dr. Dorsey, seconded by Mr. Whistler. Seeing no comments, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need an approval of, a motion for approval of the ratification of master agreement with the Association of Public School Administrators and Supervisors of Carroll County. Thank you. And seconded by?
I'll second.
By Ms. Savigny.
This year, we had open negotiations with APSASCO to arrive at a new master agreement. This year, we had the added challenge of discussing blueprint requirements, including the career ladder, which applies to many A&S positions as well as teachers. I am pleased to share that we have achieved a new master agreement that does accomplish the blueprint career ladder. The APSASCO membership has ratified the agreement this week, and now we bring it for your ratification. Questions?
Thank you for all that worked really hard to get that job done. I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously.
Ms. Herbert, just before we move too much further, I just wanted to say, I didn't say it in my comments or anything before we took the vote, but I do just want to go on record saying thank you to the commissioners for the additional $6 million.
Absolutely.
It was at a level, while we still had to find some very difficult places to cut the $4.8 million, like those are going to be some tough decisions, right? Like, and policy decisions and things. But it was able to get us to the point where we did not need to go back to the table for any of our negotiated agreements, which was just so important. So I just want to thank all the hard work of staff and the bargaining units, to get us to this place, and then to thank the commissioners for really,
Absolutely. I've been
really
thanking
getting
them,
us where we
thanking
needed to
them,
be.
Thanking
Yes.
them. We all have.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right, now we're going to move on to discussion items. And the first one is 7A, the proposed revision to board policy KHBA, school-related fundraising.
So not that long ago, last fall, we brought you revisions to Board Policy KHBA and its administrative regulations. Largely, those revisions, the first in many years, were meant to allow some greater flexibility in school-related fundraising than may have traditionally existed. With legal counsel, Mr. O'Mealy, we also discussed language regarding the Equal Access Act as it pertains to school-sponsored organizations and clubs. Following adoption, questions have arisen regarding the interaction of a limited open forum under the Equal Access Act and selling advertisements under the policy and regulations. As a result, we wanted to return the policy and regulations for further board discussion. Both Mr. O'Neill and Mr. O'Mealy are here to provide some background for the topic and then allow for board discussion to determine if you wish to consider any further policy considerations.
Thank you, Dr. McCabe. I'll lead off and pass the torch to Mr. O'Mealy. So this is a weird instance where we're not bringing you a policy with proposed revisions for you to consider, discuss, and then bring back. We're bringing it as its own discussion. And sort of the lay person's understanding, meaning mine, is that as we inserted the Equal Access Act language relative to clubs, and then published the policy and regs back in the fall, it invited a discussion of how does that apply to things like selling advertisements. And so it's listed, I think, as an item for advertisement in Stadia, but it would apply more broadly, meaning that, and this is sort of my layperson's interpretation before I pass it to Ed, it's either a limited open forum or no forum, but it's hard to find a middle ground. So if we're selling advertisements, then they may be sold to, with certain exceptions, most groups, or else you sort of have to close the forum. And so, that's the question we wanted to revisit with you. And I'll pass it to Ed in a second. Before I do, I tried to get a somewhat accurate working estimate of what would be the impact to schools if we closed the forum, i.e. there was no advertising. That's difficult because that happens in so many different venues and ways. Not just the Stadia, which is kind of easy to do, but different clubs, drama clubs, et cetera, band, et cetera, et cetera. But I would say a safe, comfortable, and it's also going to vary by school community and what that community could sell. I would say a safe working estimate is that there's probably around $30,000 a year alone going to booster clubs over the sale of banners and that, those types of traditional advertisements we think about. It's hard for me at this stage to refine deeper impact below that number, school by school. And as promised, I'll let Mr. O'Mealy give a better legal explanation than mine.
John's correct that the discussion on this policy was largely centered on the type of forum that we were either creating or have allowed over a period of time. And there's really three distinct fora. There's a closed forum where we control all types of speech. There's an open forum where we are completely hands-off. And then in between those two, we have the limited open or limited public forum where we allow different viewpoints subject to reasonable, prior articulated, neutral time, place, and manner restrictions. And what we wanted to do here is to be safely within that limited open forum so that that we don't unwittingly curtail the ability of various clubs to engage in this kind of activity, and that we make sure that the controls that we have in place are reasonable, are neutral, and do not discriminate on the basis of viewpoint. So, for example, going back to when we were discussing this midsummer last year, I'm looking at my email to Dr. McCabe and Mr. O'Neill and Mr. Shockney back from August 9, where we were looking at this and picking it apart. As we had it written previously, we had limitations on fundraising activities by schools or school-sponsored groups that must have a CCPS staff sponsor. And that was a problem because not all of our student groups are allowed to have a staff sponsor. For example, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, being a religious-oriented student group under the Equal Access Act, cannot have a staff sponsor because that would run afoul of the prohibition on an establishment of religion. Rather, we would have a staff person who was a non-participatory monitor of that group and not take an active role. So some of the language could easily be fixed, and we addressed that, and that was important. And so we also added language with respect to the purposes of school-related fundraising.
and wanted to make sure that these are for supporting activities that benefit the student body or a school organization or club, or provide supplemental funds to help defray the cost of activities and enhance the schools. All these revisions that we were discussing were for that purpose of being viewpoint neutral, having reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions, and just making a tighter, more enforceable and viewpoint neutral policy. Yeah, so that's essentially it.
Okay, thank you. Comments and questions? Mr. Whistler?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Again, I know that there's typically the conversations like, I used to be a teacher, why can't I accept donations online to decorate my classroom, those kinds of things. But what I'm also really concerned about, trying to limit 501c4 political activity, as far as, I don't want our schools to be in the middle of the political debate, the political issues, things we see going on social media, but those are just things that cross my mind. Somehow keeping our schools out of the fray of that nonsense, and but that's the thoughts I have about this policy, very specifically to the 501c4 political lobbying groups.
Dr. Dorsey, Ms. Savigny?
Are we looking at the regulations at this point, or are we looking at the policy?
Well, I think, Dr. Dorsey, we just wanted to offer the discussion, so I think we've provided both to you. Certainly, you would ultimately change policy as a board and maybe inform our thinking on regulations, but tonight was just about to what level of discussion did the board wish to have, and is there anything from that discussion that we would take forward and bring back for, kind of the track towards action.
So if we're in agreement with the, viewpoint neutral approach, right?
Right.
Limited to open, is that the right terminology? Then does the policy require any changes?
I believe not. I'll ask Ed to confirm that.
Okay.
I think where we sit today, we couldn't make a limitation such as the one that Mr. Whistler just outlined. Maybe I should be looking at you, Ed.
Well, so let's take a look. We've in the policy, we have the recognized purposes for school-related fundraising, and they're delineated there. In the definitions, we have examples of appropriate fundraising groups. 1, school-sponsored organizations and/or clubs that meet under the Equal Access Act. Okay, that's clearly, I think, an area where we want to allow that kind of activity. 2, individual school classes or grade level groups. Fine there as well. 3, parent-teacher associations. There also. 4, booster clubs and other parent-sponsored organizations, and here's some new language, that exist for the primary purpose of providing a direct benefit to school-sponsored programs such as athletics and performing arts. So I think some of the language that we added there tightens it up considerably. And then 5, countywide student organizations. So countywide band, for example, or some kind of a countywide organization that applies to all of our high schools.
Student government.
And then when we get into the regulations, we have the following are approved fundraising projects, and then we have a delineation of A through H. And there we get into an H, organizations may sell advertising at athletics and other school-sponsored events with the following stipulations. Now, here's where it gets a little bit broader. So who's selling the advertisements? It's typically our booster clubs, as I understand it, in our various high schools. And those booster clubs rely significantly on the revenue that they generate from selling the advertisements. And so, and this has been, the case for quite a long time. And it's not unlike what we used to have with our school newspapers, and I don't know that we still have that to the same extent that we once did, but you would open up the school newspaper or the school yearbook and you would have the advertisements by many local businesses and, various organizations. And we didn't, restrict who could advertise. We restricted what could be advertised. And those restrictions were delineated and based upon, I think, reasonable restrictions on what was deemed appropriate from an objective standpoint within a school publication.
And most of those things were
Alcohol, tobacco, contraceptive products, etc. Things like that. And I think we also had a thing about fortune telling, and I don't remember what it was, but I'm sure that at one point we had a problem with fortune telling, and then we added that in there many, many, many years ago. All right, so H1 through 7 is where you get into the specifics on the manner of the advertisements, vinyl banners and signs, advertising permitted on LED displays. Displays which endorse political candidates during an election will be permanently removed by school personnel at the conclusion of the election. Displays shall be placed by fundraising groups under the direction of the principal. So the principal is going to be the site supervisor of this process, of course, subject to the superintendent's designee. Displays shall be placed by fundraising groups, direction of the principal. Carroll County Public Schools is not responsible for displays that become damaged or vandalized. The group has to, take care of its own signs. All approved fundraising groups may participate in the sale of displays. However, all money raised by each group through sales must be donated to the school in one check accompanied by a written statement. And that of course, has been in existence for a long time because we want to make sure that there's proper accounting and our finance secretaries keep tight control over that. And then ultimately, the superintendent may discontinue approval of a display at any time, but would need to have an objective good reason subject to what we've discussed, for doing so. So with respect to these various outside groups that purchase advertising from the Booster Club or whomever is selling it, we have created a situation where it's already going on. And we can't say, yes, I'll allow this group, but no, I won't allow that group. It's got to be content neutral, it's got to be viewpoint neutral, and it's got to be based upon reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. We already have the time, place, and manner restrictions. I'll take it one step further. We have for years, had non-policy guidelines on political activities and election activities on school property. And so we want to be consistent with those guidelines that we've had in place going back, I'm thinking, since Brian Lockard was superintendent, and that's going back a ways. And we usually pull those out every couple of years and circulate them because those questions do arise. So that's the thought. Be consistent, be neutral, and control what we can control.
So just as an example, currently the boosters sell advertising in the form of banners and stadia. So we could get a phone call from a parent or a citizen who may not like the business or the nonprofit organization that has bought that advertising space. And so I think, Mr. O'Mealy, what you're saying is we cannot disallow one group because maybe a parent or a citizen doesn't like that group and allow another business or organization, correct?
Right, we can't pick favorites.
Right.
We can make sure that the content is within our guidelines. So we probably would not allow Budweiser to advertise.
Right.
Nor would we allow Marlboro to advertise.
Right.
But local businesses, and we're not going to pick and choose between local businesses that don't run afoul of those guidelines. And the same would apply to the nonprofits. I don't see any reasonable basis for saying we would allow a for-profit business to advertise but not allow a not-for-profit organization. We've got to treat people and entities with the same, respect.
Dr. Dorsey?
I was just thinking, the Budweisers, the Marlboros, those are easy
Yes,
answers.
they are.
We can right away say, oh, yes, we know we cannot allow those to advertise. I feel like there's an elephant in the room. I feel like there's something that's maybe not being addressed. I mean, is there a particular group that anybody would have a concern with?
My big concern are, like, we get Preborn, which is a pro-life group, and you get NARAL, which is a pro-reproductive rights group. They're putting our schools in the middle of their advertising. They're trying to peddle their social messaging and social advertising in our schools. I want to see our schools devoid of all that.
Right.
I don't want to see our schools put in the middle of a fight between Moms for Liberty and Stop Moms for Liberty, for example. I saw that happen at a library event last year, and it was just pitiful.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, we should be neutral on those kind of events.
I just don't want to see it in our schools at all.
Yeah.
For those topics.
Right.
But again, I still feel, are there other groups that anyone is concerned about, or?
Yeah, the group is really irrelevant to me.
So the if you look on in the administrative regulation, the language that we've had for many years says banners or digital displays may not include messages that express hate, racial slurs, or sexual harassment, can be directly interpreted or construed as carrying a double meaning involving sexual innuendo, tobacco, alcohol, or drug use, gang symbols, weapons, or sexual activity, or could contribute to a disruptive, hostile, or intimidating environment. Expression of an opinion is not likely to rise to that level in most cases. I think we can probably, brainstorm this a little bit more, but I keep on falling back to the restrictions that are in place in so many different contexts that we're not suppressing ideas, maybe I'm opening a can of worms, and forgive me if I do, but let's compare that, for example, to the restrictions on materials in the library under policy IIAA. No intent to restrict ideas in that. We are very, very careful in saying that the restriction there is based upon unambiguous depictions of sexual activity, and that's not restrictions on ideas. That is something that is specific. How do we do that for the
But-
purposes here.
I'm just trying to prevent our schools from being a battleground of ideas.
I understand.
That's all.
And it hasn't happened thus far, though.
No.
Yeah.
But what I hear you saying is that the example that Mr. Whistler just brought up would be one in which we would have to allow each of those groups to buy advertising banners.
Under our current policy, yes, and, you know, and even with the revisions,
Mm-hmm.
yes. You know,
Yeah, I'm just trying to prevent, look, you know, when I ran for this office, it was getting this nonsense out of our schools. And so it's just unfortunate seeing adults bringing their issues and putting our kids in the middle. I'm just trying to make sure that our schools, through fundraising and all that stuff and advertising displays, all you know, again, the idea is I don't care about suppressing them. I don't want the schools to be the battleground of those ideas. That's all.
understand. And, you know, to the extent that there is a hierarchy of protection for speech, political speech is pretty much at the top, followed closely by religious speech. Then you get into lesser protections for commercial speech. And you know, but we've allowed it. The fact is that people haven't taken advantage of it. We've had people come to schools for back-to-school nights or football games, and they've stood outside of the stadium or outside of the school in areas that don't obstruct traffic, and they have passed out their flyers to those who would be willing to take it. We've had that for forever. Yeah. And that's in our guidelines.
So what are we suggesting? So I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Whistler. You know, we don't want the, you know, political battlegrounds and, you know, all the, you're saying if we allow one, we have to allow them all. It's like, okay, well, the example that you gave, we don't want either of the sides of that argument advertising. How do we want neutrality, right?
how do we do that?
So how do you recommend that we?
I am not recommending. That's the
Okay.
point. I am recommending that you not restrict political speech.
So
I mean,
not
that's
restrict.
why it's not in there.
But if we don't restrict political speech, does that mean that we have to allow folks to advertise it? So we need.
Vote for me, no vote for me.
Or you might have two different political groups
Yes,
who advertise.
that's right.
And when I receive questions like this without legal advice, and maybe I'm wrong, you either turn it all off or it's all open in a limited fashion. And so I couldn't find a different place to be, and that's why we brought this back for discussion.
What if it violates our political neutrality policy, right? Like, is that part of the guidelines that we could say, nobody, like, we don't care what side of the politics you're on, you can't do political advertisements?
But our political neutrality doesn't restrict anybody but ourselves. We do not restrict students. We do not restrict outsiders on our political neutrality policy. We only restrict school employees in the schools.
Something to chew on. And again, I guess we'll welcome public input on this. And
We're going to have to. There's not, yes. Yes, dear.
I think too that it makes complete sense what Mr. O'Neilly is saying. I think that's what you explained there, Mr. Whistler, was a worst case scenario. And it sounds to me that the further we get into the discussion of trying to identify what even something political is, the more we get into legal issues and the more we get into borderline censorship. And we don't want that, especially for students. And students themselves have rights to be politically active and be politically engaged in whatever side they choose. And I know that we want to keep that away from our schools, but it's pretty much impossible to do that with the rights that we have been given in this country, basically. I think that the way the policy is written right now, when I was reviewing this, I was just confused as to why it was here, but that would be the perspective of the students in this scenario.
If I could follow up on that, when I went to Westminster High School, whenever we had student government elections, we had posters in various locations at the school, subject, of course, to whatever reasonable restrictions were in place. Vote for student A for student government president, vote for B for student government president.
Or the person who forgot to make a poster, and that all is allowed, right?
Right.
When Ed went to Westminster High School, all posters were in black and white.
The message was still there.
Yeah,
That's the
right,
main-
right.
Yes, Liberty High School had class elections, and for some reason, the class of 2026 went very interesting with banners with eagles on it and a lot of interesting things, but all of it was allowed.
Well, I guess we'll put it out for 30 days, and then we'll go from there. Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. And now we will move on to the proposed revisions to the public participation guidelines. Dr. McCabe.
All right. So recently, we recognized that our public participation guidelines offer protection from individual employees from being discussed in public session, but do not specifically offer the same protection to individual students. While that may always have been the intent, we believe it is best to be clear. Therefore, we recommend this minor edit to the public participation guidelines to make it clear that public comments may not include discussion of individual students. Questions? Discussion?
Comments? Go ahead, Saeed.
So, a couple questions here. When it comes to a student coming to the podium and talking about themselves and their own experience, that would be okay under this?
Yes.
Okay, and with that, I think now that we have this policy back into the discussion table, I wanted to bring up something kind of interesting that I thought about the way that we have public comments. I've heard a lot of opinions from a lot of students saying that the way that we choose public comments is kind of complicated of a process right now. Something about how, I can just go through this. A total of 15 slots, that makes sense. Keeping the registration open only on the day prior from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., it gets more finicky there. It's kind of a complicated process, and if there was a possibility to open it to keeping registration just open until the day before the meeting, I think that would make the process a lot easier for students and community members as a whole to not just be able to apply easier, because we do want people coming to public comment and we want people inputting their opinions and standing on the board in front of us. It would also just make things a bit more open, and this process currently feels constraining to a lot of students and community members alike.
So you're saying longer length of time?
Yeah, something along the lines of just keeping the registration open instead of leaving it open only for one day.
One of the reasons that we have registration open on the day before the board meeting is that the agenda for the board meeting comes out on a Monday. And our priority is to have public participation address an issue that's being brought that evening. That's our first priority. And so we want people to look at the agenda, see what's being discussed, and then determine whether or not their comments would be relevant to that board meeting. And then Tuesday, they have time to sign up. And then Wednesday, our communications department needs time to go through each of the signups and then let each of the individuals know whether they've been selected, if they're over 15, whether they've been selected to participate that day. So that's kind of, I agree that it is a bit finicky, but those were the reasons, the intentionality behind those details.
And is it possible to open it for 2 days? Like if we opened it on Monday, and just have it open Monday and Tuesday, just to give folks a little bit more time to get in there?
We could look at that. Any problems with that? Okay. Yeah.
All right, well.
We can look, yeah, we
Right,
can look at
and
that.
the reason I say that is because we do have public comments that are talking about the agenda, but most of the time, public comments are new things that are brought up by community members or students or new ideas. And a lot of students just had a lot of trouble with the idea of why is it only open from this certain period of time on this certain day. It was just a process that I was struggling as to understand why they were doing that. So
Have other people complained? No? Okay, that's what I just wondered. I mean, so you say they have difficulty getting in, or?
No, just like, oh, if
It's
I
a
forget.
time constraint.
Right. Oh my goodness, if I forgot to sign up this day, I can't do it.
If I can make a comment, I got to tell you, I read every single email that is sent to the board, every one. And some of my favorite emails are from students. I really wish people would take advantage of that more. It's very convenient. You click a button and it comes to all of us. So I really wonder if the students understand or know that they can do that. But I'll tell you, some of the most insightful and greatest input I get that drives my decision-making are the emails I get from students. So hopefully we can
All right, well,
publicize
we'll
that.
put that out for 30 days, and, and people can just think if Monday and Tuesday, then we'll, bring it back. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This one particular item that you were suggesting, though, is kind of intended at, a couple of prior meetings, some folks that came to talk got dangerously close to identifying particular students, right? Like,
Correct.
we certainly want
We don't want
any and all students that want to talk to us,
Yes.
we want to see them, right? Like, they can come and talk about their situation, and, we would love to hear from them. But what we don't want is for parents
Targeted.
that parents are coming in and making comments that make a particular student very identifiable. Like, that's
Correct.
not what we want to have happen.
No, we do not.
Right.
So they can't talk about their student.
They can, but even when that occurs, usually when we call to let them know that they've been selected, we caution them a bit as to what they may reveal in public participation, and we always encourage them to speak with their student first, only because we have had circumstances where a parent or guardian may divulge something from the podium that then their child has to live with in school the next day. So, yeah.
Not a good situation. All right. Anything else? Thank you, Sahitha. All right, we'll put that out for 30 days then. And now we will come up with now we will discuss the proposed 2024-2033 Educational Facilities Master Plan.
All right. In May of each year, we bring a revised Educational Facilities Master Plan to you for discussion. The EFMP, which is required by the state, is our 10-year planning document for our capital assets. It is also the place where our annual enrollment projections are maintained. Ultimately, the items contained in the EFMP are prioritized, then incorporated into your annual CIP request to the county, state, which occurs later in October each year. After your discussion this evening, the revised EFMP will be submitted for public comment before returning at the June meeting for your approval. This annual timeline allows us to submit the plan timely to the state each year by July. Mr. Kane, our facilities planner, is here to note the major revisions to the EFMP, which are also listed on the cover sheet.
So this is the annual update to our 10-year facility master plan. It's a pretty large document. A lot of it stays the same from year to year, but there are some changes, updates each year. I'll just highlight some of the changes that are kind of major or pertinent. Section 2, which is the part of the plan that looks at kind of demographics and the community, the county, basically information. Every year we look at different data sources and kind of update with the most recent data. Some of it's census data, some of it's data from the Maryland Department of Planning and such. And then we also do update the list of schools that are considered inadequate or approaching inadequate by the county's concurrency management and adequate public facilities ordinance. That's more just for informational for the community and for the board. So we do update that every year. Section 3, which is really just kind of describes a lot of the instructional programs. Each year I send it out to instructional staff and here at central office and ask them to review it to make sure, because sometimes the names of programs change or offerings change at various schools and things. So there were some updates specific to pre-kindergarten, the expansion at the schools that we're going to be expanding, Title I and some Judy Center language in the back of Section 3. Section 4 is kind of the facility inventory section. It's where our statewide capacities, school capacities are. There's some information on attendance boundary maps and a state form that kind of gives a summary of each building and how many square feet it is and when it was built, that kind of thing. There were some changes to statewide capacities specific to Ebb Valley, Runnymede Elementary, and Winfield Elementary. And also, now that East Middle opened this school year, the new building actually has a different statewide capacity than the old building, so that change was made as part of this plan. Section 5 is the section where the enrollment projections are included. Each year we do a new set of 10-year enrollment projections, so the new projections are in Section 5. And finally, Section 6, which is kind of the major, that changes almost every year, that whole section, because it's where the facility needs analysis is done. So we look at what are the capacity needs, what are the modernization needs, what are the instructional program facility needs, and we kind of look at that every year. And then there's, at the end of the section, there's a construction calendar where we kind of plan out projects over the next 10 years, and then that calendar goes into our capital request, which is basically the first 6 years of that 10-year calendar. We assign dollar amounts to, and we request funding from the county and the state to try and get those projects done. So I highlighted kind of the major changes in the documents in yellow, just to kind of give you a sense, idea of where to look as far as the changes. So. With that, I'd be happy to answer any
Take it away, Ms. Savigny. You two will have a 15-minute talk here.
Thanks, Mr. Kane. No, I appreciate this. I mean, I actually, it takes a little while to kind of get used to the cadence of this, right?
Mhm.
Like through the whole budgeting process with the, enrollment updates, and then, the EFMP, and then the CIP, and, kind of.
It starts all over
And it starts all over again, right? So I now kind of know, what every year, what I'm kind of looking at, like, okay, what's going on with some of these updates. So it's helpful that we, you pointed out, I guess, on Section 2, page 9, so the inadequate schools, right, which is 120% and greater of capacity. So, Freedom and Sykesville are the two that hit that. We know that we have projects in the hopper, right, like we're addressing those.
Correct. The county did include in their proposed, the commissioners in their proposed budget that's out before, they still have to adopt it, but they did include design funding to start additions at Freedom Elementary and Sykesville Middle School. So based on that, in the enrollment projection document, there's a section with utilization percentages. I did build in the capacity in the year in which we would anticipate it opening, so that those utilization percentages go down. the years in which they're over 120%, you see for Freedom Elementary, it stops at 2027. That's because the addition would open. So.
Right, yeah, that, it was very helpful to see those adjustments in the projection saying, okay, you can see it building, and then here's where it gets addressed, and you can see it kind of correct itself there. I was curious about some of, so I guess we're not really talking much about the approaching inadequate, right? Because we're saying that, okay, we're gonna we've got a significant number of projects in the pipeline, in the works, and we'll wait and see how the enrollment wait for another couple of years on the enrollment projections just to make sure it plays out the way we're expecting it to,
yes,
right?
There's a few of the projects in that approaching inadequate that will be addressed, like Cranberry Station Elementary, Sandy Mount Elementary. When the current kindergarten pre-K additions are done, those percentages will come down.
Right, and you see those as well in the yeah.
Some of the other schools, approaching inadequate is a concern. It's one where we would kind of keep an eye on the projections, and some of them are in that southeast area that the SARC committee kind of looked at in the past. I think that's an area we'll continue to monitor, and each year, I guess, going forward, look to say, should we be doing something to address it? Is it becoming an issue? So.
And I guess if you look at, you had mentioned a couple of updates in section 4. If I'm looking at 4-2, you've got Ebb Valley, the regular classrooms of 22 highlighted. So there's 3 changes on that page. I'm not sure I understand what those are in reference to.
So Ebb Valley Elementary's capacity was based on 20 regular classrooms in previous years. The change, adding the 2 classrooms, is when Ebb Valley was originally built, it was built with community use space as part of there was an agreement with some programs that were partnered with the Families Learning Together program, and the state participated in an extra 3,000 square feet. Those spaces were originally built to be a parent resource room, a parent classroom, and an early childhood classroom. Shortly after Ebb Valley opened, kind of the funding for some of those programs fell to the wayside, and they just never materialized. So over the last, I want to say, decade, the school's actually been kind of using that space for various purposes: professional development space or resource classrooms, gifted and talented, ESOL. But kind of recently, in the last few years, they've been using one of the rooms for their 5th kindergarten class, and one of the other rooms as kind of just a classroom. If they have a 5th second grade or a 5th third grade, they've been using it as a classroom. So this is just recognizing that those spaces really are being used as classrooms, so we should kind of count them in capacity.
Okay, so the same is generally kind of similar situation in Winfield, maybe?
So at Winfield, the school was originally built as a special ed regional center in the 90s, but it was built with, I want to say, 5 or 6 special ed classrooms at a time where we had more, the regional center serviced more kids, less mainstreaming of kids. So those extra classrooms have been functioning as special ed resource rooms for a period of time, but recently, I want to say the last probably 5-6 years, some of those, and one specifically has been basically a homeroom. It's been a second grade or third grade classroom for a number of years, so it's kind of recognizing, trying to make the capacity reflect kind of reality. So we instead of calling that a resource room, now we're going to call it a capacity classroom.
Okay.
And then at Runnymede, it's a regional special education center. It houses the prep program, and in previous years it housed Learning for Independence program. That it no longer houses the LFI program, so that classroom used to count in the statewide capacity for 10 seats, 10 special ed students. Now that classroom's being used as a resource room because they no longer house the LFI program. There's just not enough student need in that area, I would assume they're able to handle it either in their home schools or in other ways. So it's just a reflection of capturing reality again. That so at Runnymede, it's a reduction of 10 seats.
And then those get reflected through the utilization calculation, the state rated capacity and the utilization.
So in the enrollment projection document, those utilization sheets reflect these new capacities. So the percentages are based on the new capacities.
Okay, so these are similar adjustments as to like what you did with some of the health rooms a couple of years ago, right? Just kind of.
Correct. Annually, as part of my planning process, I try to look at, I might try to look at elementaries one year, or next year I might look at middle schools, and look at the utilization versus the capacities to see if the capacities are reflecting today's reality. Because a lot of these schools were built with the classrooms, one purpose in mind, but like instruction changes so much over time that if we don't kind of look at where we are today, then it doesn't really reflect reality. So I try to do that on an annual basis.
Yeah, I guess I did just want to remark, like overall, when you look at the enrollment projections, right, like at the elementary school level, we're getting close to 100% at the elementary school level. So it's
we're moving along.
Darn good thing we didn't close any more elementary schools way back when. But there was something interesting that happened in the Sykesville enrollment projections where it kind of decreased for 1 year and then kind of spiked after that. Is that something that's something interesting going on with one of the feeder schools, right? Like you have an unusually large class.
That's generally what happens. Is a middle school sometimes, or elementary, but a middle schools is dramatic because there's only 3 grades. So 1 year they might get a typical class might have 256 graders. 1 year they might get 300. Well, that 300 6th grade then becomes 300 7th grade. And then if the other 2 grades are 250, all of a sudden they have 50 more kids than they usually have. So, but then when that 300 moves on to high school, it drops 50 all of a sudden. Their enrollment drops by 50, and you're like, what happened? It's really just the projections are a function of as those students move
the
through.
cohort projections.
And they never come in neat bundles of 100. It just, some years we get 130, and the next year you might have 85. It's like, what happened that year?
They just don't come in nice, neat little packages like that, right? Right.
You wonder what the explosion will be when the COVID years, those kids get in the school grades, A lot of people being home and births increased in the hospital systems. We saw that for COVID.
Yeah, I guess it is a good thing to see, when you look at Sykesville Middle, when you're seeing the projections, they're getting up as high as 125, but 125%, but then when the addition comes in, okay, well now it's back down to 95, right? Like, it holds pretty steady there, right? So we're building the right amount of seats based on the future projections, right? So it's not like we're trying to overbuild or anything like that. It's like, this is what's needed and only what's needed, right?
That's the goal.
Right.
That's a good thing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of triangulating on this with some of the additions of the elementary school, the additions that we're putting on the elementary schools, and thinking about, okay, it's not as cost effective to do additions as it is to maybe build one additional elementary school. But I think if you look at the cost, like that's still the most effective way to do it.
Yeah, there's different from a building CIP construction costs. There's one thing, but opening a new school also has a big operating cost. So like it's weighing those. But additions, where we are, I think with our growth, is additions seem to be making sense in the numbers that we're seeing as far as specific to a region.
Right. So. Right. Yeah, I mean, it's just, it actually is all coalescing really well in terms of what our needs are. We're building the right amount, but okay, we have some needs, but we're doing it responsibly, and it's all.
Yeah. The only thing that really concerns me is these numbers reflect students, which is great, but one of the blueprint mandates, comp ed piece, if we're forced to move a bunch of teachers around, I'm worried about teachers having adequate space to do their job. And so these numbers don't reflect adequate space for teachers and students, and that's really one of the things that concerns me most. And again, I keep talking to so many leaders in Annapolis. We need more capital funds to anticipate those things if they don't relax the requirement.
Right, this doesn't take into account any of that, right?
Nope. I mean, what we're going to move so many teachers to say Northwest Middle or FSK. Where are they going to work? Teachers too deserve to have a space, a desk, an ideal working environment. It's not fair to cram all those teachers and not give them adequate space. But these numbers only reflect students, not staff and students. That's the only concern I have.
Okay. You have anything else?
No, I was just
Okay.
gonna say, like,
All right.
just blueprint notwithstanding, right? Because that's gonna bring a whole new set of issues to this whole process. But it's really good to see after several years, there were really big issues years ago in the county in terms of the infrastructure of the schools kind of deteriorating. We weren't funding our projects, and we were able to get the FCI score incorporated. We were able to kind of get an understanding with the commissioners of this is the pace with which you need to replace things, and understanding the needs. And it's just great to see after all that effort that we're kind of in a good place and the process is working. So thank you for all that you do.
Okay. All right, and now we'll move on to unfinished or new business. Mr. Whistler.
Thank you, Madam President. I do have something to talk about real briefly, mainly a statement. Last month, Dr. Hart and staff were so good at sharing with us the STARS ratings, and a couple of us on the dais, exhibited some pretty healthy skepticism, and unfortunately, the press kind of made it like we just were blowing off, the drop in scores. So last month, we learned that nearly half of our schools saw a decrease in STARS ratings after former school superintendent Mohammed Chaudhry changed the model to calculate school performance. The significant drop in ratings didn't make sense to me, considering that we routinely outperform the vast majority of many other counties statewide in terms of testing, graduation rates, and attendance. Many educators called me and voiced frustration, and they even felt insulted. Many parents questioned me as to whether or not our schools are declining. I spent a great deal of time reassuring them that the new method, in my opinion, to compute STARS doesn't reflect reality or focus on academic achievement, but instead the new model appears focused on rewarding progress and making all schools in the state appear similar in success. Well, several days ago, Dr. Carrie Wright, whom I have a tremendous amount of respect for, she did miraculous things in the state of Mississippi, our new state superintendent also recognized the flaw in the STARS rating system. She too sees a tremendous disconnect. How can 76% of Maryland schools have 3 or more stars, but only 23% of students are proficient in math and only 47% proficient in English language arts? So bravo to Dr. Wright. She is an advocate for transparency, and I applaud her for recognizing the flaws and a lack of common sense in the new STARS model, which in my opinion inflates ratings for low-performing schools and minimizes high-performing schools like ours in Carroll. So I want all of our CCPS educators to know that you're doing incredible work. Our students, compared to other jurisdictions, are at or near the top of the pack. We all know there is room to improve, and we will if parents and educators continue working together for students. So again, I would love to see our local papers talk about that instead of making the insinuation that our schools are failing or that our teachers aren't doing the job that they need to do.
Thank you, Mr. Whistler. Okay, at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, June 12th, 2024, the public board meeting with citizen participation in the boardroom at 125 North Court Street, Westminster. I need a motion to adjourn by Dr. Dorsey and seconded by Mr. Whistler. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We're going to miss you. Best wishes. Best wishes, and enjoy Florida. Thank you all.